OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
All right, you're very welcome along to the Monday Club, Shane Hannon. It's Monday. How are you?
Good to be here. Someone commented actually recently calling me Shane. I don't do Mondays, Hannon.
Is it good to be here? I see like a little bit of salpidine or something to just take the edge off.
Yeah, I've got a stay on my eye. So anyone who wants to zoom really far in on their cameras this morning, please do and enjoy it. So yeah, a little bit of painkillers on a Monday morning. It's my first Monday morning in 3 years.
How do the young people get pink eye these days?
I don't know. Obviously the whole rumour is the fart in the pillow, Ger, but I don't think that was the case with myself. I think I just got it. So
I haven't heard that rumour. Mostly the rumour would be that, you picked it up off another human being. No,
that certainly wasn't the case with me. That wasn't the case with me. I haven't been out enough recently for that to be the case. So
yeah. I wish you all the best with that.
So yeah, it's good to be here on a Monday morning. The traffic was brutal and it was raining and it was dark. So a nice welcome to the Monday Club.
Yeah, off to a good start. Right, well anyway, it is 7:31 and there's too much that has happened over the weekend for us to labour the point any further. If you want to get involved in the conversation this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We're going to get straight into the performance rankings. Alan Quinlan is standing by. He's going to talk to us about all of the rugby, Josh van der Fleer, the Nick White scenario and everything else that's happened over a very busy weekend. England coming back from the dead. Wales, I felt a bit of sympathy for Welsh rugby. It was a very unusual situation at the weekend.
No, you didn't.
Sports pages. We're going to talk with David Sneyd. We've Qatar 2022. We have apparently one of the all-time great club hurling matches where the reigning All-Ireland champions are starting to feel themselves against the Limerick side. Is there any template there for the rest of the country to try and beat Limerick? I'm not sure, but we'll talk about that. And meanwhile, Ballyhale are slowly regathering, feeding the revenge narrative. And then we'll bring you a clip from the Sunday papers to play out this morning. But as ever, if you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Let's get straight into the Gillette Labs performance rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
Have you done this before? Do you know what you're doing? Are you okay on your own here?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
So basically, we have a traffic light system, Shane.
Okay, talk us through it for the viewers that don't know either.
Red is bad.
Okay.
Amber is like meh, and green is go.
Okay, so we get to the good stuff at the very end, the positive stuff at the end. So we start off with a really negative start to the Monday morning. The red, the really maroony red, is FIFA and Qatar, Ger. I guess we could say the fans and what happened yesterday in the first game. Like I was watching the opening ceremony with Morgan Freeman and I was thinking, this is bizarre. And then you see the empty seats emerge in the second half and you're thinking, they're just picking up their little feeds and their non-alcoholic drinks at half time and enjoying themselves and having a chat. But those people never took their seats. So by the end of the game, there's thousands upon thousands of empty seats. And I know a lot of journalists, Gavin Quinny was in the stadium as well, and they were kind of saying it was just a bit of a bizarre atmosphere. You saw the Qatari fans behind the goal who apparently had been there from well before kickoff. And bear in mind, this is a stadium 40 kilometres outside of Doha, I'm fairly sure, middle of the desert. Traffic situation wouldn't be the best, but it was just a bizarre one. And then you're seeing the likes of Erdogan up in the comfy seats with the FIFA top brass and the Saudis and the other Gulf leaders, and it all just felt a little bit strange. Like if you're watching on TV, you saw the Gary Lineker kind of kicked it all off with a fairly reasonable speech that he would have prepared for quite some time and spoke out fairly vehemently against the Qataris, which was powerful. And then you see Gary Neville over on BN Sports, the Qatari channel with Richard Keys and Andy Gray, and probably less so. I think he was a little bit more toned down on Qatari television than he perhaps was at home. But I don't know how you felt, Ger, but the whole thing for me had to be in the red this morning in terms of the whole first day experience. Like, we're not even talking about the match, and for good reason.
Yeah. I mean, the match in some way redeemed a little bit the sport itself in that, like, I definitely, when the first offside decision was made, you're like, oh, it looks like the fix is in here. Yeah. I still don't really understand the offside decision, even after they show us on VAR. No. It's like, well, when was that ball played? And is that who? So
and when was he offside? Like
what point in the whole scoring of the goal is this? It's obviously, like, it's when the ball is played to him.
Yeah, but
it was anyway. It looked it did look like, oh, this is not going to be great. And then they award the penalty, which I think is an important moment in football history, where it's okay, the fix is not in. That's good.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, at least, Enner Valencia wins the game, and you can't just buy the tournament any more than they've already bought the tournament. And you have to say that it's backfiring pretty rapidly, right? Like an empty stadium, people constantly talking about the migrant workers and human rights issues. Like, is Qatar, will their reputation be enhanced by having this? And maybe the sports washing isn't working for a change.
No.
Maybe the sports washing is actually having the Barbara Streisand effect.
Yeah, usually it does work. We've spoken on the show many times about how sports washing has worked, and all of a sudden we're talking about Newcastle United's performances on the pitch and forgetting about the Saudis. But on this occasion, you're seeing the empty seats and you're thinking, like Mark Ogden made the point on Twitter yesterday, football journalist in the UK. He was talking about the fact that he's seeing Argentinian fans walking around in Qatar and how passionate they are, and he saw the same in Russia. They were probably the country with the most fans in Russia. I think he made that point. And like, you know, nowadays we should be giving a World Cup to countries with the most passionate fans. And yes, we're giving a World Cup to a country with absolutely no football culture. I'm not saying that the Middle East shouldn't get a World Cup. Of course they should.
Like, it's possible to have all of these competing notions in your head at the same time. I do think that a Winter World Cup is not the massive aberration that the Anglo-centric world thinks it is. Like, it's a Winter World Cup for everybody in the Southern Hemisphere every time. You know, like, but it doesn't work with our football season. Like, well, your football season is not the only football season in the world. Yeah, sure, the Premier League is the biggest and richest, but like, if the biggest and the richest always gets whatever they want, that's not really the whole point of this. So I do think that, like, so I saw the clip of Gary Neville saying that a Muslim country and a Middle Eastern country should be getting the World Cup. I actually would agree with that. Yeah. It isn't the World Cup of democracy either. It isn't the World Cup of Commonwealth of like-minded states. It is supposed to be genuinely a World Cup. And like, at some point, all of those conversations about everybody's foreign policy can lead you to go, well, okay, we can't have any dealings with this country. But so notwithstanding all that, Qatar shouldn't have had it. Like, that's very clear, right?
Well, yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly clear that they're not really ready for it, and that it's going to be a bit of a shit show. And so hopefully this whole thing has backfired. Like, but having said that, Gianni Infantino has been reappointed unopposed for a third term, so nothing's going to change.
Today I feel, he's just the most bizarre speech ever that you'll ever see in advance of a World Cup. Like, you start to wonder, does Gianni Infantino have people around him that are telling him not to speak, or does he have too much power that maybe they're afraid to stop him from saying certain things? But if anyone had looked over that speech in advance, I mean, surely you would have said, hold
well,
on,
it was ripped off from Andrew Cuomo, the New York politician from 2017. So I'd say they thought it was great. Like, oh yeah, I'll have a little bit of that. And it's, you know, I mean, in the right hands, the speech could have been very powerful. Like, you know, if somebody wasn't a complete hypocrite uttering the words. But I think we should move on from this, because I'm already like
vexed and tired of it.
Yeah, so that's red. The first red, FIFA and Qatar.
Second red, slightly less red. Rugby head injuries, still a very serious issue. And I mean, the conversation has flared up out of Ireland's 13-10 win over Australia on Saturday night at the Aviva, and Nick White. And for anyone who watched the match, you'll have seen that the worrying images of him being very unsteady on his feet, poor balance. I don't know what he was like in terms of his coordination, and that was a point made on television afterwards. And this whole issue of what did he have, a dazed, blank, vacant look? I mean, you can make your own mind up. The interesting discussion on Virgin Media with Joe and Matt Williams and Rob Kearney afterwards. Matt very much making the point that you have to trust the medical professionals on this situation, and Rob Kearney kind of saying, you know, you have to err on the side of caution when it comes to concussion. And he's someone, they're both in fact people who have experienced concussion at some point in their own careers, and they reference the Jeremy Loughman situation as well, and we know that concussion symptoms sometimes don't show up for 24, 48 hours, which is a very fair point to make. And with Nick White, you don't have to be a doctor to look at those images and say, well, that's concerning. If he doesn't have concussion, he's unsteady on his feet for some other reason, and regardless, he needs to be taken off the pitch for his own sake. So yeah, listen to medical people, yes, but it is rugby's biggest issue, and the lads made that point in television. It was very concerning. I don't know what you've made of it, Ger.
I think the fundamental issue here is that the HIA is not suitable. And so by their own laws, there shouldn't have been a HIA, but the fact that there was a HIA, even after the referee says I saw him stumble, means that the system isn't working. And we're going to talk about this with Alan Quinlan a little bit later on. He sent me a link last night to an NPR story that came out in the aftermath of Tua Tagovailoa. He's the Miami Dolphins QB. He was concussed 1 week, and then the next week he went back out and played, having been essentially cleared to play through their version of the protocols, which, you know, the HIA is a part of rugby's protocols. And then the next week got a horrific injury and was sparked clean out. Now has since come back and made a full recovery, so you know you hope that there are no lingering issues from it. But what happened in the aftermath of that was that the NFL decided that they were going to change the rules, because the rules here clearly aren't working. So whatever the disputes about the symptoms, like once somebody stumbles, they're supposed to be taken out for their own good. It's possible that the stumbling was missed by the independent medical people. You would hope that they're listening to the ref mic and that they can hear that, and that there's not just one of them. You know, in a situation like this, it's possible that there are going to be multiple concussions at the same time, so you would hope that there are more than one, and so somebody else is like, you keep watching there to see if there's any other bits of data or information or evidence that will help us to make our decision. Because even at that stage, like, why are they going through the HIA? You know, so Nick White says, I was pulled off by the physio to do a HIA. That's the first problem. I felt fine. I passed my HIA, I went back on. He's subsequently been stood down for 12 days, right? Because there's like a series of criteria that if you meet any of these, you get automatically stood down for 12 days, which is now the amount of time that they're doing. Remember, it used to be shorter than that. Like in years to come, we'll look back on that period where you could get concussed on a Saturday and be out of the protocol in time for the following Saturday and go, really? That doesn't seem like a very good thing anymore. So now it's gone out to 12 days, and he's saying that, like, I feel good, I passed my HIA, it's good to go. Like, I'm 78 kg running up against these blokes. Mate, I feel fine now. You guys can attest to that. The process, I did the HIA and passed it. I'm good. How often do I run out of the corner, out of a line out and get bashed by 3 blokes? I was just a little ginger. I'm fine, mate. So, I think the fundamental issue here is that the game doesn't quite yet know how to deal with this properly, even though it's being sued on multiple fronts, and even though it's the major concern that any parents have, that any players have, that any ex-players have about the long-term damage that brain injuries are going to cause. And this keeps happening. Like, it just keeps happening. The same thing keeps happening again and again and again. And rugby's doing its best to try and get on top of it, but whatever they're doing at the moment is clearly failing. And so therefore, you have to say, go back and change your rules. Like, an organisation as self-protective as the NFL, and that uses up the lives of its protagonists in a brutal way, even they changed the rules. Even they were like, well, maybe we need to revisit this. And it, like, in large part, it was driven by the Players Association. So I actually don't think that the rugby players associations around the world have been anywhere near as strong as they should be. They're all very close to their respective rugby unions. And what are they doing about this? Like, where are they saying, okay, we're going to go on strike, or everybody's going to wear their socks down next week, or everybody's not going to take part in sponsor activities around the next internationals or something? Like, what are they doing to say, fix this, World Rugby? Because, you know, where's the impetus for change coming? So that was it. I think it is a very complicated issue. I hope Nick White has no long-term damage. I understand the pressure that the independent medical person is under. It's like split-second stuff, and if they were focused on the first bit as opposed to the second bit, and so therefore they're like, well, he banged his head, but he got up okay, and he's fine here, he's in the room now, and he's passed all his tests. Like, if nobody had told the independent medical person that there had been stumbling, then what are they supposed to do? Because they can't magic it into existence, you know? If you don't know what you don't know, that's...
Yeah, and it was quite obvious to everyone in the stadium who saw the 2 incidents on the big screen that you know, he was unsteady on his feet, that's for sure, and the independent doctor needs to be made aware of that. You know, if they're not aware of it, then they need to be made aware of any video evidence that kind of backs up potential concussion. And like, it's okay Nick White saying that, you know, I feel fine, mate, but the reality is it's not down to the players. So, you know, a player can't decide while they're concussed whether or not they should be able to play on, and even 24, 48 hours later, they might still be feeling the effects of concussion and not knowing it. So, yeah, we do need to listen to medical people, but yeah, as Rob Connie said, it's the single biggest issue facing rugby at the moment, and there's still a long, long, long way to go, as we've seen from recent studies.
Right, what's next?
Republic of Ireland into the amber, I guess, Irish football. So we had the 2-1 defeat to Norway, of course, disappointing, and a poor performance as well. And then Malta last night. Let's look at the positives for a second, because we rarely do that. Jamie McGrath was good. Callum O'Dowda has come out of these couple of games with his head up. Mark Sykes from the Ormo Road in Belfast, first Belfast-born player to line out for the Republic since the 1940s.
Really?
Yeah, apparently so. So really good to see him get his first appearance. Evan Ferguson, more football as well for the first team. A win and a clean sheet, I guess, is a positive from last night. And people like Nathan Collins, of course, staying firm and keeping those clean sheets. Caoimhín Kelleher to get his appearance as well. That's a stretch. Now, the reality of it and the negatives on this is that it's Malta. Now, we should probably be beating a team like Malta by 3 or 4 goals.
I don't think there's anybody in world football we should be beaten by 3 or 4 goals.
Possibly not.
There isn't. I think that time has passed. We're really at bottom of the second tier, top of the third tier in European football, and all of those teams can put in a defensive performance and at least draw against us. We don't have those rights anymore.
But if you look at the level of players we have in the team, we have a few Premier League players and then a majority of Championship and a few League One. Malta aren't anywhere close to the level of the players in the Republic of Ireland squad. And we even talk about how the Irish squad is nowhere near what it was in the 90s, which is fair.
Yeah, and we actually have struggled against Malta, even when we had those brilliant teams.
Yeah, and that's maybe international football and players not being used to playing with each other. But I mean, last night, you look at the first touch of some of the players, the look of concern some of them had when they were on the ball.
Well, that's not good.
No, it's worrying. And you're heading into March now against France and the Netherlands, and you're thinking, well, Jesus, how are we supposed to... the only positive you can take from the last week as well is that Malta drew, I think, 2-2 with Greece. So, I mean, Greece are going to be in our group as well, and I'd be concerned about Greece. They're probably the worst out of that pool of teams we could have been drawn with. I really don't know what the positives are. The whole Stephen Kenny conversation is going to keep going. Of course it is. It's not going to stop. But then people turn around and say it's a results business as well. And he got the win last night, I guess.
I know, it's only friendly. So I think you're right to focus on the performance after a game like that, and I'm sure they will too. I think some of the tabs in the morning. Here's to few, Mr. Robinson. Is the back of the Mirror.
Very good.
And they also have Kenny's Rob of the Green, which isn't great. That's Callum Robinson. There was another one. So what's this word? Can you see the screen? What's this bottom word here? This word
Malta barley.
Yeah. Come on.
Malta barley. Malt barley.
Exactly.
Right.
But barely barley. Come on.
That's a stretch, is it?
Come on, folks in the Star. You can do better than that.
They tried. At least they tried.
No, this is better. Multi Towers.
That's okay.
No, that's the inside one.
Yeah, I like that one. They could have gone with that on the back page.
A and B. Yeah.
The most pointless game of all time. When it comes straight after the opening World Cup game, albeit a fairly dour World Cup opening game in terms of the two teams involved. A 7 o'clock kickoff in an international friendly that means absolutely nothing. It's tough to get excited for it. 700 Irish fans over there as well, making a lot of noise.
Well, I'd say the weather's slightly better than it is here this morning.
Yeah.
Will says, haha, I agree with Ger about our current level, but I don't remember it being so realistic under McCarthy last tenure. Well, Mick McCarthy wasn't picking the right team. He couldn't get Matt Doherty in the side, and our performance against Gibraltar was much worse than it was against Malta last night. And I'd seen Mick McCarthy manage really good players before and not do a great job with it. So, there you go. Ger, the question you need to ask after 2 years is Kenny making progress? The answer is no, says Il Postino 88. I've been defending him since the beginning. Now it's just not happening. The subs were ridiculous. Hendrick has played through all the qualifiers and Nations League. Why not give Smallbone those minutes? Did think that there was an opportunity there to give Smallbone, but I guess they couldn't risk another collapse the way we have seen the team have a recent collapse at the Aviva in a game that was won and dusted. Dahlia Shocknick says more skill and genuine commitment in the Ballygunner versus the Pearship game than this entire World Cup sham. Tying everything nicely together. Will says, worrying. It looks as if the players' enthusiasm for playing for him, Stephen Kenny, has waned. I don't know. How do you tell that from like an end of season friendly? I mean, it's obviously not the end of season, but it's the end of that competition is now over, and there's a new competition starting, and we'll have the world's best players coming in short, quick, rapid fire to the Aviva. I think they're going to get up for that, and I'm hopeful that something happens, but I don't expect something to happen at this stage. But we've got a tough group.
Should the motivation not be there to line out for your country, even if it is in a friendly? It's an international friendly, but
when
I mean,
you say the motivation, what do you mean?
It's a cap. It's a cap for your country.
Sensational. You're going to put the best performance of all time in, or you're like, this doesn't actually mean anything. I've got to get up for it slightly differently. I'm trying to win my place here. I'm trying to impress.
Yeah, all of the above. You're trying to win your place. You're trying to impress Stephen Kenny. You're playing for your country. Albeit
you thought we should have won that game 3-0 last night, all singing, all dancing, the way we always do in away matches in international.
No, but like with the players on our team and the players on the Malta team, I mean, we should be winning those games. And look, I understand the conservatism, and one of the listeners has made that point that he's quite conservative with the substitutions. Stephen Kenny was making that point in the press conferences in the last 2 weeks all along, because he said it's a results business and he needs to start picking up wins, albeit in friendlies. It doesn't matter. So I understand that. We just struggle against the low block. Malta had a low block. We struggle against weaker teams for some reason. I just don't understand why. Like, on paper, my point is that they should have been winning a game against the likes of Malta 2 or 3-0. Like we didn't. We only won because of
I don't think
Maltese
there's any team in the world that we could play at the moment and you go, oh, we're definitely going to beat these 3-0 like in international football. I think those days are gone. That's the first thing. Look, I think it's a big campaign coming up next, and the team needs to perform much better than it's performing at the moment.
Should we not beat Gibraltar by 3 or 4-0?
I think if we're like, I mean,
we should. We mightn't though.
Well, so what does history teach you? That we should do these things that we don't actually ever do anymore. Then
we lose to the Faroes.
Well, then our expectation isn't that good, or like it should be. I don't. This doesn't. These literal international friendlies barely exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think they're kind of useless as reference points in the long term and medium term. What we've seen from Stephen Kenny's side is they can put in really good performances against very good teams. They have struggled consistently against sides which defend against us in any meaningful way. And I mean, I was flicking, I'm not going to lie, I was flicking back and forth from this game last night to the NFL going, I mean, maybe I'll just watch some of the Red Zone.
I was doing the same with the snooker. I have to
a little bit of Red Zone in my life. Why should I be punished? What do we do to deserve this Malta game?
Yeah, it was tough.
So I think we should be sticking a pin in the Ireland stuff until
the March.
Yeah, and then it's do or die. And that's it. Like, judge me on this. Yeah, okay, well, actually, and you made a rod for your own back by talking about winning the Nations League group. But it's good to have ambition. And it'd be very ambitious for us to think about qualifying from the draw that we've got. But, like, that's the game. And let's see what happens. We're going to talk about this in more detail with David Sneyd. So if you've got proper football opinions you want us to get to, we will get to it. We've one of the best young centre-backs in Europe. Play 4-3-3, says Neil Martin. I mean, okay, we definitely have a very highly rated centre-back, but his form is not good at the moment. Like, not good against Norway. Not good last night, was it?
No.
I mean, again, I didn't see the full 96, 97 minutes.
Like, McLean wasn't good last night. Matt Doherty, I'd almost suggest that, like, could you play Matt Doherty for Ireland at left wing back and have him tucking in on his stronger foot?
I definitely think that's
an option.
Yeah, I think that he did it. He did it well the one night that it happened. And, so his form's not great at the moment. But I don't know. I definitely would love to see a bit more from our better players.
The experienced heads, and McLean and Doherty are two of those. And even you're seeing the likes of Hendrick coming on and not doing much. But look, it's a friendly, and I take your point. It's hard for them players to get motivated. I think you should be motivated playing for your country, but when you're looking at everyone else heading off to the World Cup and March is the next competitive fixtures, I understand.
Chris Cal says, in before the anti-Kenny, the only time to start judging Kenny is from March, not before. And Jared Lynch of the World Cup says, it felt very strange, the whole run-up to it and everything about it. Not the same. FIFA World Cup should be in the summer. I mean, as I said, it's summer in our part of the world in summertime, but it's actually winter in half of the world. Literally half of the world, it's winter. So, our summer is the only one that matters. It's a fair point.
We do forget that sometimes.
Onto the green.
Yeah, onto the green. So into the slightly yellowy green. But Irish rugby, I think that's where it belongs because it's been a strange one. Because we've won 3 from 3, so we should be buzzing, shouldn't we? But realistically, I don't know how we all feel. Like Brent Pope made the point after the match with Steve-O on Saturday night against Australia. Like, it's like boxing against rugby. You kind of sometimes struggle, but if you can get over the line and get the wins, and you know, a number of years ago we'd have taken any sort of win against the likes of Australia. You know, to have beaten Australia, to have beaten South Africa, to have beaten New Zealand, to be the world number 1 team in the world, heading to the Six Nations. I mean, in that perspective, it is in the green. We're record equaling 12th consecutive home win for Ireland. That's positive. A November clean sweep. Some really good performances. Ross Byrne with cojones of steel.
Yeah. I mean, Josh van der Flier is the real reason this is in the definitely.
Yeah, well,
in the
that's
green.
huge.
So World Player of the Year is van der Flier, which does not happen very often. Keith Wood at the very start, Johnny Sexton once, and now van der Flier. That is. We'll talk more with Quinny about this. The team has been named there. Sexton was in at 10. So I could just make it out for you. Ellis Genge, Malcolm Marks, Tyke Furlong, Tyke Burns, 2 Tigers. Sam Whitelock makes it. Pablo Matera of Argentina, Josh van der Flier, Gregory Aldred at 8. The French were very upset that he didn't get shortlisted. Dupont at 9, Sexton at 10. Marika Korobetti from Australia, if I got the pronunciation right. Damien de Ellende from South Africa. Kanya Am, Will Jordan, and Stewart at fullback for England. So is that the most we've ever had?
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, that's not bad. You take 4 in the World Player Team of the Year. Like, I saw a lot of people, and this is the same with the PFA Team of the Year or with the All Stars. You're always looking at who's been left out, and Eben Etzebeth for South Africa has been left out. Sevilla for the All Blacks left out. So probably a couple of players that could have been put in, but we're not complaining with our 4. And really, really nice to hear Josh van der Flier talking afterwards about the fact that, you know, when he was a kid, he used to keep track of all the World Rugby Players of the Year and the top 3 and kind of learn them off by heart. And here he is, the 3rd Irishman to win that award after Keith Wood, as you say, and Jonathan Sexton. I mean, this is unbelievable. I don't know to be expected. He had an unbelievable year, van der Flier, but I hadn't heard any word that he was prime position for this award.
I think it had been the chatter since the All Blacks. Really, it's like, oh, he's in the running here. You know, he's been showing up in all the big games, and of course, it's actually only the internationals that count for this.
Fair, yeah.
So after the Six Nations, he'd been, you know, one of our best players in that. But Dupont had actually been player of the tournament, and it's pretty harsh. Dupont's the best player in the world, but fair play, van der Flier, totally deserved. Big win for Irish rugby. They're in the green. What's next?
Yeah, we'll take them. And next in the green, a very, very good weekend for Irish golf. So no winners, which seems strange. But we'll start with Leona Maguire. So she was at the CME Group Tour Championship in Florida. She ended up finishing runner-up to Lydia Ko. It was a $2 million prize for the winner. But not a bad weekend for Leona, because she collects $550,000 for her second place finish. Sensational 9 under 63 on Saturday. She had started the 3rd round, I think it was 7 shots behind Lydia Ko, and a really unbelievable performance on Saturday brought her right back in contention. She drew level with Lydia Ko after the 3rd round, and you know, she had said afterwards, if you'd offered her second at the start of the week, she would have taken your hand off. Really tricky conditions as well yesterday in the final round. So to finish second and to pick up over $500,000 for her weekend's work, not bad at all for Leona Maguire. Seamus Power as well, huge step again towards Ryder Cup selection, and every week he's kind of proven week on week that he really should be in this Ryder Cup team. So came up just short in his bid to win for the second time in 3 starts, but he tied for 5th in the RSM Classic. This was at Sea Island. So went into the final round tied for 13th, so kind of opposite to Maguire. He was 3 shots behind the leaders, but a really, really good final round, 466. The winner was Adam Svensson, the Canadian. He carded 664 to win, but Power still wins $277,000 and will be top of the FedEx Cup standings when this tour arrives in Kapalua in January. That'll be his next big one, the Century Tournament of Champions. So I mean, 1st, 3rd and 5th in his last 3 starts, Seamus Power, and look, more Ryder Cup qualifying points. So that's the big one. And he even spoke afterwards about being disappointed with his performance in some regards. So he should be a shoe-in for this Ryder Cup team, and it will be great to see him. And then Rory McIlroy. So finishing the year as European number 1 for the 4th time in his career. First time though since 2015. John Ram was the winner, and John Ram was unbelievable at the weekend. He won the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai by 2 shots over Tyrrell Hatton and Alex Noren. McIlroy was back in 4th, finishes top of these DP World rankings. So Matt Fitzpatrick blew up around the turn. So Matt Fitzpatrick, of course, the US Open back in June. He needed to win and for McIlroy to not finish runner-up or to finish second and McIlroy to be outside the top 7. But he capitulated a little bit on the back 9, Matt Fitzpatrick, to allow Rory McIlroy to finish number 1 for the 4th time in his career. He was very consistent, and look, I guess the next question for Rory is, when can he break this 8-year major drought? But the way he's playing, Ger, I mean, you have to feel like it's right around the corner. Now, there's no guarantees in a major. You're never guaranteed to win a major, but the way Rory is playing, surely it's in the next year.
Well, yeah, you kind of feel like it's
Which would?
it's bubbling up, and definitely his best chance is coming in the next 6 months. So, right, they are this week's Gillette Labs performance rankings. If you've got a view on them, you can get it into us 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
To celebrate the Black Friday sale at Harvey Norman, we're giving away a €100 Harvey Norman voucher every day this week on Twitter, with the grand prize also coming away with a Canon EOS M50 MK2 camera and a Selfie QX10 photo printer. To be with a chance to win, tell us who this superstar Portuguese footballer is, responding when I asked him why he wanted to replace Owen Sheehan as the OTB AM co-host.
Because I think it's the time to say something. And because I like you. As simple as that.
You can tweet us your guess on our Twitter page @OffTheBall, and please make sure your DMs are open, because that's how we contact you. And if your DMs aren't open and we pick you as the winner, we can't tell you you've won, so we're moving swiftly on to the next person. Right, Harvey Norman is the only place to shop for the best Black Friday deals on appliances, technology, furniture and bedding. Up next, Alan Quinlan in studio. First, here's Brent Pope talking about Ireland's concerning reliance on Johnny Sexton.
But look, you're right. I think we all know that, Johnny Sexton is key to Ireland at the World Cup. So let's call a spade a spade. He is. And I mean, without Johnny Sexton's leadership in managing players around the field and his kind of, I suppose, what he brings to the team, he's vital to Irish rugby, and he needs to be kept in cotton wool. Now, he'll want to play every game next year's Six Nations, but I don't know that he should, really, in a sense, because I think we're still undecided about who the number 2 and 3 out halves going to the World Cup.
So you think if fit Joey Carberry needs to play a meaningful game, shall we say, in the Six Nations?
Absolutely. And I think that was what Jack Crowley would have got out of today. He would have got about, this is a different level and I've got to come in, and I think he performed admirably in that situation. That, it's the worst time to come in as replacing your kind of talisman, and also coming in as he did maybe the night before the game or the morning of the game. He's thrust into a game against Australia, one of the leading rugby nations, in history, and he's with that responsibility. So I don't think it was his responsibility to have had enough experience to say, this is what we should do, this is the calls, this is what we should do. No, because he's only been with the squad, a few weeks or whatever. So like that, so that when you take away that responsibility that Johnny Sexton brings experience. Forget about his play, that's been so youthful this year. It's his experience that counts. To say in a situation, guys, let's just slow it down, let's eliminate the mistakes, let's put the ball in the corner for a while, let's maul them, let's do this, let's go for goal, whatever it is. That's what you miss, is you miss the leadership. Now, certain forwards, obviously, they can come into, but forwards don't necessarily, they just want to get on with their own game sometimes. They don't want to be bothered having meetings and deciding what the backs want to do. They just want to say, look, let's just go through a brick wall at this stage, So look, yes, we've learnt a few things, and that's good, and I think that there's still a balance out on a few players. I don't think any of these players have cemented their position, those fringe players, just yet. I think they've got to do a little bit more, and I think they'll be a bit sore about this game, because I think you're right. I think this was a golden opportunity to say, I'm going to back up a game against Fiji or a game against South Africa with another performance, and I'm really going to put up their name so that, who does he leave out rather than who does he put in. So I think Andy Farrell's probably a few decisions to make before the next Six Nations, but I think you're right. I think if Joey Carberry is going to be number 2, or is Jack Crowley going to be number 2, or is Ross Byrne going to be number 2, then I think absolutely they need more meaningful games, because if we get to a World Cup and Johnny Sexton's suddenly ruled out, then the player that's got to step in is going to have to step into games like this, in a cauldron and get a win.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
As a border country to England who has incredible ties with them, there is literally nothing wrong with not wanting them to win football games. And we'll have the phone-in shows about maturity that will come up if they start going well in a couple of weeks, and how we all need to get over ourselves. Nobody's asking Scottish fans to support England. It's only Irish fans that need to get mature.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
Right, 5 minutes past 8. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, the news has come that Nick Whiteman stood down for 12 days, which is what happens when they see you stumbling on the pitch. They're like, oh, you shouldn't be playing rugby. But what actually happened was that his stumble seems to have been missed by the relevant people, and he was allowed back onto the field. And afterwards he was like, I was fine, I passed my HIA. So rather than getting into like the whole back and forth about the rights and wrongs of this, you immediately said in commentary you thought that was the end of his game, and then when he came back on that you were very uncomfortable about it. So I think I know how you feel about it. What should happen? What are the lessons that need to be learned to prevent this from happening again?
That's something that needs to be really tidied up in this situation, because it's not as if we don't have proper camera angles, we don't have enough of people there. I think the independent match doctor has come out and said he's looking at the first incident in the replay. I'm on commentary and I can see that Nick White gets a heavy fall and hits his head off the ground when he's trying to tackle Mac Hansen into touch. He's kind of crunched down, looks dazed. Wouldn't be usually concerned with that one. He looked dazed and I have no issue with him playing on. I wouldn't be saying he's got to get off the field there. There was no wobbles there on that one, but he looked dazed. I think from the line out, then it's taken off the top, and he's trying to hit his back row up the mid of the field to create a breakdown for the kicking option, and has to take it on himself, and he gets tackled and hits Josh van der Fleer's knee. I think pretty much straight away I can see that he's in a bit of trouble. He's in a spot of bother. The replay comes up, and within probably 20, 30 seconds I can see that obviously after the ball is cleared and stuff like that, we can see that he doesn't look good. So I think that the independent match doctor has come out now and said that he was watching the first incident. Well, I've seen the first incident and it's done in my head at this stage, so I don't know why he's back rewatching it. I know the analysis there. So what can we learn from it? That needs to speed up. I know the independent match doctor is a doctor. He's not a commentator. He's not a rugby person in a sense. Does he need more support and backup?
Well, once the referee says, I saw him stumbling, that's surely that.
Sure. What are the Australian doctors doing? Forget about the independent match doctor here for a minute. What are they doing to protect their player? Nothing. They're letting it happen. Their doctors went onto the field and their medical people went on and they tried to keep David Parecki on the field. He's stumbling around the place. He's played and hit 2 or 3 rucks after he gets his initial knock. He's trying to stay on the field. Actually, the game was stopped because Ben O'Keefe was trying to, restart the game. So, that was, for me, was like, why is this player being kept on the field here? And eventually he leaves the field, David Parecki, the starting hooker. And he's obviously got a heavy knock. But why aren't they watching what's going on here with... Okay, they don't have the replay of the screen, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. But when they go in there and the doctor is with, and the medical people are with Nick White, and he's crunched down and he nearly falls backward. He stands up and he stumbles. For me...
There's an opportunity there for the Australian medical team to step in and say, he's actually stumbled.
He's gone.
So we're not sending him for HIA.
He has to go then.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. There's no HIA. And the match doctor, the independent match doctor that we're talking about, who's watching the first replay, doesn't even come into the picture. We call it ourselves. And I would like team doctors to be able to... The independent match doctor is there because we had some stuff, and I think with... George North, a few number of years ago, played a few games, club games and internationals, and he unfortunately he got a number of kind of bangs and knocks. There was one particular one, where he played on for Northampton against Leicester. He was clearly knocked out and it was missed, and he gets up and stumbles and he ends up being on the field for a period of time. This can't be allowed to happen at the top level because it trickles right down through the game. The magic sponge scenario with a group of kids on a Sunday morning, or junior rugby players
it's
playing
like you'd actually think
seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, or whatever. You know, they've got to come off the field. And the problem we have here is second impact syndrome. So he's got, and this happened, the young kid in Belfast, Benjamin Robinson, a number of years ago. His mum and dad have been very vocal about speaking out about what happened to Benjamin, and it should never happen. And, you know, Nick White, I thought, very strategically has rolled out for media. Like, even doing that is a sign that they knew they'd messed up, and they put him out there to say, oh no, I was fine. I never played against Nick White. I never actually met the guy. I'm a big fan of his as a player. He's a brilliant player. He has that bit of niggle that you want, and he's confrontation. He's a great player, and he's been brilliant for them even in the tough times. And he's hardy. He's tough, but it has to be taken out of the players' hands, and we cannot keep going on about this time after time after time.
Because it keeps happening.
And for me, Ger, this is the biggest story of the game. And it happened in the Argentinian-Scotland game as well. Juan Malia Cruz Malia, the Argentinian fullback, he got obviously concussed right at the end of that game against Scotland, and was left on the field as well. It cannot happen. And people can criticise World Rugby and a lot of concerns about this stuff in the game. But World Rugby have tried to implement the low tackle focus, the zero tolerance around any head collisions, and they've stuck to their guns. And I think they were dead right, and I've always been an advocate of speaking about that, where they're not shifting, they're not moving. You know, these rugby collision comments that we hear, oh, that's just a rugby collision, that's just a rugby collision. We obviously have to change the behaviours of the players about lower tackle focus. And there was one on Saturday as well with Valentini and Dan Sheehan carrying the ball in that first half. Valentini got injured, he hurt his ankle going back, but there was a face on face. It was like as if their chins met.
Yeah.
The only reason that wasn't upgraded to a card situation is because Valentini doesn't come forward at that last moment. He doesn't move forward with impact. And I think that's what saves him. But his tackle technique is not good there. He's got to get a bit lower. And some of these are accidental. And some of them you can say sometimes when there's a head-on-head that it's... look at the New Zealand one, Angus Ta'avo, in the second test against Gary Ringrose. He's not trying to headbutt or use his head to hurt Gary Ringrose, but he's upright. There's a serious head collision there. And, you know, there was a lot of talk in New Zealand. That was just a rugby collision. So World Rugby can't be faulted for trying to push and implement this, and the referees implementing this.
The one thing I'd say is the HIA obviously doesn't work. You know, it's...
The HIA doesn't, yeah.
You know,
so the thing here, Ger, and we don't know, and
what they didn't. So you sent me the link to a story about Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins quarterback last night, and what happened was they looked at how horrific the situation was, where he got concussed one week and then sparked out the next week when everybody knew he shouldn't have been playing that second week, right? They just changed the rules after that. They had a meeting with the Players Association and said, this isn't really working, this is very bad for us, very bad for you.
How can that happen in the NFL after everything that's gone on with all the lawsuits and the situations?
Because
in the modern, like, you think this is 20 years ago, this stuff. This is...
I'll tell you why it happens, right?
2022 that we're watching Nick White in this situation.
It happens the same way Nick White can pass the HIA. The tools aren't perfect. The tools are actually very imperfect. And so when the tools are imperfect, what you do is you err on the side of caution.
This is it.
And you give them 12 days. So
you like
Nick White passing the HIA is actually quite interesting.
So for any listeners, do you want to clarify what's happened now with...
So he's going to serve a 12-day stand-down period. So when they assess you different criteria, and he was criteria 2, which is balance disturbance, right? He's been upgraded to a criteria 1, which he's been upgraded from criteria 2 to criteria 1 because of the balance disturbance. Basically, once you start falling over,
the balance disturbance that 99% 0.9% of people saw,
Yeah.
and the independent match doctor didn't.
Exactly.
Or the Australian doctors, or the Australian coaches.
Who was right there with them actually when he stumbled, because he's not on his own when he's stumbling. He's actually, as far as I remember anyway. So look, the Australians should have self-diagnosed and stood him down, and then there should be better. So I was listening to a thing again. The NFL have this thing where the co-coms actually get the director's feed. So you watch the real play, and then you're seeing all of the replays happen immediately on multiple screens. There's no reason why, with all the money in rugby, that couldn't just be piped into the independent doctor. And there's also no reason why the independent doctor couldn't have a spotter. As far as I know, there were supposed to be spotters watching rugby matches to see if anybody, because it's too busy. There are literally potentially 30 collisions happening at any one time, 15 collisions happening at any one time on a match, in every single moment of that match. You multiply that out, it's millions and millions. So you need more than one person.
This defence that he's watching the first incident, I'm saying to you, and I can be challenging this, the first incident for me is he's dazed. I can see that, but I can see his body language is... Well, it's kind of like down getting a breather, getting winded, Shane, or something like that. You're up, you stand up, yeah.
Presumably they're also listening to the referee's feed, which says I saw him stumble, and that's the end.
No, but I'm saying the first one on Mac Hansen. Then he gets up, the line-out is kind of set, there's a bit of a break. He looks a bit kind of winded, shall we say, whatever. The line-out takes place, and all that happens very, very quickly, that the immediate picture of him crunched down with the medical person and stumbling backwards, and then standing and stumbling, and the referee saying it. Surely, Ben O'Keefe even needs to come into this situation here, where maybe not Ben O'Keefe, but maybe he's assistant referees or fourth official. That, hold on a minute, why is Nick White going back out? It's difficult for them because they're being told he's passed the HI. He's been cleared.
I saw him stumble. I saw him stumble. Because he says it.
Because I think Ben O'Keefe is the probably one who has to come on and say, right, Nick White's coming back on the field, hold it here, I'm going over to the sideline, I'm double, triple checking this here as to what I saw, and he has the power to say no, this...
Yeah. And everybody in the world is going to go, okay, you're erring on the side of... Now, spool it forward, a World Cup semi-final, it's Johnny Sexton.
I don't care, Ger. I don't care, and I'll stand over this.
I think,
I don't care if Ireland are playing the World Cup final and it's in the balance and there's 10 minutes to go and
the
we're
right thing is to get the
putting
player
massive pressure on somebody, and we're going to get a penalty or something that Johnny Sexton could potentially kick to win you a World Cup final. He's off. And I won't change my stance on that. And, it's easy go over the top here and start. I'm not calling out everyone here and this, but I'm saying we need to make sure that this doesn't keep happening.
Because it keeps happening.
The Jeremy Loughman thing should have been when things like that keep happening and there's no learnings from it whatsoever. It's like, in another year or two time, if this happens, we'll remember the Nick White thing.
Ireland came out, Shane, and apologised, and it can be missed, but it shouldn't be missed. Okay, that's what we're saying, because Ireland are not getting away scot-free with that, but they held their hands up and said it shouldn't have happened, and they took him off afterwards. When they realised the situation, and look, when your adrenaline rush as coaches in the box and stuff like that. So the Australians are the same, tight game, they're watching stuff, they're getting messages down. This can be a bit of a sideshow at sometimes. It needs to be kind of tidied up now once and for all. And Nick White coming out after saying I'm fine, I passed big fella's run out. It's a lot of rubbish because he was told say that. My opinion is he's told roll him out in the media and take the pressure off us. They know they messed up here. It can't happen.
One last thing, right? The Players Association, what are they doing in all this? At least in the NFL, right? And they're like one of the most compromised players associations in the world because they're taking the money from the NFL. At least they went and said, this isn't good enough, you need to change the rules. I've heard nothing ever from the Players Associations about concussion. I've never heard them come out and say, oh, we really need to, we're going to do something, we're going to go on strike, we're going to do anything to raise attention to this.
Yeah, and if you look at the reaction, they have to, and I think this week it has to happen. The World Rugby Awards were on last night, and incredibly positive from an Irish point of view as well. So there was yesterday, and you're digesting this. So I think there needs to be a bit of clarity in this. But I want to hear from the Australians. They're going to Cardiff this week, and they have a number of injuries themselves. And in fairness, they were very, very unlucky with all the injuries they got. Just one of those days, and Saturday for them could easily have won the match. But they need to address this. I think talking about the match doctor and the independent doctor saying he was watching the first clip of that. They got to call it themselves.
Yeah,
and I know going forward, none of this is perfect, Ger. The HIA isn't perfect, but it's a much more proactive, better approach than we had 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it still needs to be changed, I think. Like if Nick White's passing his HIA...
in very simple terms, and just before we finish on it, if you show signs that Nick White showed on Saturday, i.e. balance and issues like that, you're gone. The game over, and that's it.
Okay. The game itself, right? So Josh van der Fleer, World Player of the Year. It's a phenomenal achievement from him, and we got Team of the Year, second coach, and 4 players in the team. And really sensational. Is there any chance we pick too soon?
No, because I think Fiji and Australia are great for us in a sense that
because they were so bad.
Yeah, and even if we lost on Saturday, I think I heard Andy Farrell say that maybe a bit of negativity around the team, and maybe wouldn't do any harm. I think we're getting that little bit of a different approach to 2018 because of last week and this week, and this Ireland team isn't as good as we think. And I don't think we are. Maybe you're never as good as you think you are. You're never as bad as you think you are as well.
In the middle, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle, and I think they know that. And I like Andy Farrell's honesty. I think the players know that. I think they need to be better. Australia made it. The word dogfight was used a lot. It's very true. And look, I don't know what people think at home, but I don't think anyone is getting to that position. I think even in 2018-19, I think it was you asked me, could Ireland win a World Cup with what happened? And the honest answer was, well, if they keep playing like this, they're in with a shout, and they could. And then it unravelled, obviously.
My fault, is that what you're saying?
It's all your fault, Cher. Yeah, well, you and, you always give out about Wales, and they do brilliantly, don't they?
Yeah, they've got it the right way around.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Georgia in a moment, don't worry. In all honesty, though, right, the performance wasn't great, and at the same time, it didn't feel like we were going to lose the game at any stage, really. So maybe at the end when they kick to the corner, there's a chance.
I think the stuff you can take out of that as a player and coaches is, I think, obviously when your attack isn't flowing and you're turning the ball over a bit. Ireland had 13 turnovers, 27 missed tackles. That's too high. There's lots of stuff in that game that they'll look at and they think they need to be better. But I think there was a period there in the first half where Australia had them under a lot of pressure, and it went to 23 phases, I think. And Ireland looked like, they came up with a big turnover in the end of it. They looked hungry. They looked like...
So the defence
I
structure
think
is excellent.
fundamentally, in any sport, you want to be hard to beat, don't you, first of all?
Yeah.
And you want to be kind of cohesive in the way you defend against the opposition. And I think if you do that, then, well, you can start adding a little bit to your game as you go along. If you're a brilliant attacking team and you can't defend, well, it's great viewing for everybody because you're going to have high-scoring games, but you're rolling the dice every time you play. So I think they've become very robust and strong, and they have a good standard in where they tackle, reload, the numbers they send to the breakdowns, the way they spread out a little bit. Now, you can say all that defence was good, but I think Ireland's defence for the Pattaya try, where it comes back to 10-all and Australia score, and then you have that nervy end, that was a little bit possibly switching off, quite narrow.
Okay.
Craig Casey is literally outside, your last man with Jimmy O'Brien, and they're in no man's land, not through their own fault, through the narrowness on the inside. So again, tight match, one score like that can cost you a situation. So even though the defence at times, and you can take a lot out of that, the work rate, they know what they're doing. They're very well connected. The turnovers weren't as good. I think our breakdown hasn't been as good, particularly in the game 2 and 3. Australia, maybe the South African game did take we got that incredible high right at the start. So yeah, there's plenty to work on for him. And have we peaked too soon? No, because we haven't got that. We haven't got that brilliant. But the year itself has been brilliant. Wales are coming in the first Six Nations game to Dublin. Dare I say it? You got to keep that little bit of steel about you. So when the opposition analyse you and when they play against you, they know it's going to be really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think for Ireland 2019, the game plan was pretty direct, a lot of kicking and stuff like that. And there was a lot of, if you slow Ireland down and you make the breakdown a mess, and it's a little bit like the Leinster situation, well then you nullify them a bit. So Ireland have got to kind of develop and figure out that when they're slowed down, how do they actually go back and implement a really punishing kicking strategy? You know what I mean?
Has the fact that Sexton was injured again even highlighted? And I saw the argument funnily made online that it would have been more beneficial for Jack Crowley to have been on the pitch kicking that kick that Ross Byrne took. But does it nearly highlight more the need, whatever the order is, whether it's Carbery and then Crowley and then Byrne after Sexton, to play those players in the Six Nations and to give them actual experience in big games that mean something? Because if that happens to Sexton in the World Cup in a big game, these lads need experience in big games themselves.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying last week with the Fiji game that Joey Carbery starts there and he starts against Australia as well. Didn't happen, and now it's taken away that opportunity for him to do that. So it's I think what happened Jack Crowley in the last 2 weeks and even the last number of weeks, being emerging Ireland, being in the Irish squad, will hugely benefit him. Ross Byrne with the kick, what that will do for his confidence. Probably feeling a little bit down and disappointed that he wasn't there involved and kind of challenging in the first place at the start of the campaign. Do you start him in the Six Nations? Yeah, well, you have to look at it. You have to look at these situations, and I think there's still that difference between what Johnny said, and it's his presence as well, and his real determination. And
is the presence anything to do with the knock-ons? His absence anything to do with the knock-ons and level of intensity and focus?
Well, you know what, Ger, if that is a possibility, when I played for Munster and Paul O'Connell's not in the team, it
was a holiday.
Mick Driscoll, who was a brilliant player international, and he knows it himself, Mick, and Donncha Ryan, they play in the second row. But it's not his general play, it's just the build-up, what he's saying before the game, dealing with the referee, lifting the crowd. You can start adding layers there that kind of and shouldn't be like that, because so maybe that's an intrigue that Andy Farrell now has to figure out, that if Johnny's not out there, who's driving, who's speaking, who's vocal, who's driving that kind of little spark that you need. And look, you can't just create these type of guys and characters. They're unique sometimes. And Rog was the same for Munster. If he wasn't in our back line, he was always barking about what we do and the standard, and he's that type of guy, and he's a leader and he's a captain. So
and you can see it. I'm not saying that it was the reason why normally steady under the high ball, back three or scrum half, suddenly you're catching the ball on their chest and it's bouncing forward, and you're like, but at the same time,
what they're dealing with is they're dealing with that expectation pressure now, and it can be challenging for them, some of them, so they kind of,
and ultimately
you go back 18 months ago, I saw lots of articles about how brilliant Ireland's attack was in the last summer tour, Six Nations. Previous year was rubbish, so things can change very quickly. I think they need to add a little bit more of a layer to actually going back to being a bit more pragmatic. Sometimes we're trying to play a little bit too much. So we got to be ready for the situation of, and Ireland do, I should say, of teams slowing them down, being incredibly physical. But Australia's discipline was really poor. When you have 4 neck rolls so both sides give away 12 penalties, and Australia had 4 neck rolls in that in that game.
That's all Australia talked about in the pre-match press conference. Rennie was talking about that discipline, and ironically, Shane, it was the thing that just went.
4 neck rolls is incredible.
Yeah,
that is, it was killing them. Ireland give away 12 penalties. They're breakdown stuff. They're being offside, jumping the gun a little bit. These things that are marginal ones that you look back and you say you need to be better. But 4 neck rolls in the game like that is. And Fainga comes on and he's the sub hooker and he gets he gets sin bin for it. You know, it's baffling to say the least.
We should talk about Scotland, who started this window with their best player not in the squad and finished it with him back in the squad and starring against Argentina, who are supposed to be one of the coming forces in world rugby, and they put 50 points on them. They put a really good performance in against New Zealand the previous week. They beat Fiji, not straightforward, but they beat them well in the end. I think they did score the 4 tries, and they only lost by a point to Australia.
And we're getting out of the group.
They're in our group.
We're either playing France or
we haven't even talked about Scotland or the possibility,
or New Zealand.
They're actually getting better.
I think Saturday was crazy because of the red card, the 2 yellows. At one stage, they're playing against 12 men, and Buffelli actually scores 12 men against 15. They score a try, but Scotland, are a very dangerous side, and I think at times you wonder, have they that kind of next step in them to be really consistent and get results and get across the line. I think they're always going to be aggressive and competitive when you play against them, and they've some really good players. But
and they're listening to all of us say it's between us and South
well,
Africa.
not me. I've mentioned this many times, and if there's any Scottish people listening, you can go back and find it. Scotland are going to have a big say in what happens in this group. You know, Scotland could beat Ireland or beat South Africa. They're that kind of a team that if they get it right on the day and they cut out their mistakes and they execute, they could really upset the group. So I think both Scotland, both South Africa and Ireland would be very, very mindful of that, and they wouldn't be underestimating them. And they'll have a say in it. You know, they had a really disappointing. Ireland had a bad 19 World Cup, but Scotland had a really poor one as well. Ireland walloped them in that first game. There was so much pressure on Gregor Townsend. Talks about, you know, him stepping down, all that kind of stuff. He's still there, and he's fought his way through that, and they've had some big results in the last number of years.
Finn Russell thing is amazing. Can you imagine if whatever about our fascination with tens? I can only begin to imagine what it's like in Scotland at the moment, where you have this mercurial genius who can't get in the team, is out of the squad. There's the drinking stuff, and then there's no, we're all friends again, and then he's not in the team, and then he's back in the team, and all of a sudden the team looks great again. It's
yeah. Look, the thing with Finn Russell is he's an incredibly talented, off the cuff type of player, and he can give you that tempo and bounce you if you need, if you're a bit flat in your performances, and but he's dependent on a lot of front foot ball. You know what I mean? Your forwards doing well, breakdown being good and stuff like that. And when he gets that time and space, he can create stuff. He's so ambitious, and that's all he thinks about. He doesn't think about kicking and, you know, slowing the game down. He wants to play that way, and he's openly said he's not going to change.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to and be a little bit more boring or direct in your approach, but if they can get him right, if they can get Finn Russell right, he can be a big plus for them. But that relationship between Gregor Townsend and Finn Russell is one that, you know, Kinghorn, is he a 10? I don't think so. Adam Hastings was injured. We talk about our depth at the fly half position and where that's at. It's nearly a situation for most teams, most international teams.
We should talk about England, right, who come back from the dead at home, and it looks like they're going to get absolutely annihilated, but scored 3 tries in the last 8 minutes to draw the game. Minor controversy in England about Marcus Smith kicking the ball dead when they get one final opportunity to go and try and win it. But notwithstanding that, right, what are we to take from what England are doing at the moment with stuff like this? Are they really good or are they really bad?
Somewhere in between. I think Eddie Jones has kind of chopped and changed so much in the last 2 years that it probably, I don't know if it's helped. What he's trying to do would probably argue if they go to a World Cup or have a good Six Nations and World Cup, he will say, well, this was my plan all along, to be ready for this. It could have been really bad at one point on Saturday. New Zealand were looking like they were going to run away with this, and England were struggling. I think they're stifled in the way they play, and Eddie Jones is criticised, and I like him in a way that quirkiness, that madness, that kind of attitude that he doesn't really care at times what he says or where he goes. Part of me really likes that in him. And he's an entertainer, but he's a good coach as well. And he's had success, a lot of success over the years. But I think it could have been really bad. I think if they took a walloping here from New Zealand, the pressure would have ramped up again. They can take a fair bit out of it to say, here's the template of what we can do when we play. So you play out of desperation. And again, in any sport, if you're 5 or 6 goals down a soccer match or a big score in GAA, you're going to try and get something out of this in the end. And rugby is a prime example of that, the way it can swing. And they threw caution to the wind and they started playing with pace, tempo, offloads, running hard. And you'll ask the question, and English people, I see some of this stuff online as well. Why didn't we play like that from the start? You know, why don't we go like that from the start? So I think they've been very pragmatic in their game plans and trying to physically dominate teams. And they're not the same team that beat New Zealand at that 2019 World Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
One of the great performances against a really good New Zealand side. So where are they at? They're somewhere in the middle, I think. They can still be a real force if he gets his selections right and if they play with a bit more ambition.
Will Wayne Pivac survive this window? Like, it's very late to be firing somebody. Wales would have a track record of being happy to fire you very close to a World Cup. And, I mean, he looked like he'd made a recovery last year, but you get beaten home by Georgia and suddenly everybody's like, what's going on here?
7 Nations. We need 7 Nations.
Yeah, I just thought that, I actually thought on Saturday, if that happened to Ireland, what would the reaction be like? You know, and we've played Georgia a good few times over the years here, and they give Ireland...
They've nearly beaten us.
But they give Ireland, a decent enough rattle 2 years ago. Was it last November? I can't remember anyway. It was. Is it too late? Yeah, I don't know, Ger, and I think... Who would you get at this stage? What will it do?
Ask Scott Robertson to take the gig, but he can have the England job after the World Cup. No problems.
You've it all worked out.
Get some good experience here,
Scotty. To put you on the board of Welsh rugby. I don't know. I think the problem for Wales is when they make a number of changes like they did, there's depth issues and there's... I think they're trying to get their regions much stronger and more players coming through. I think they've a lot of good, exciting young potential there. But when you go down the depth chart, and we're in a similar situation, if we were missing a number of players, and we probably showed glimpses of it last week, even though we got the job done, I think, but that's an horrendous result for Wales. It's an incredible result for Georgia, and you don't want to be disrespectful saying that what I just said, that I think they're improving and they're always a force. If you're not physically ready for Georgia, they can really frustrate you and mess you up. And they've never beaten us, but probably should have beaten us in the 2007 World Cup.
Oh yeah.
Bar Dennis Leamy in the 78th minute, he holds one of the Georgian players up where they're over the line and thinking they're scoring a try. So it's a tough situation for them at the moment. And
we beat them 23-10 in 2020, November 2020.
Yeah,
we beat Italy in the summer as well. Like they're making more and more arguments for inclusion in the Six Nations.
Yeah.
Like Wales 12-3 up as well. They kind of just, I don't know if complacency is the thing when you're 12-3 up against a team like Georgia, but like they just gave up. Georgia obviously had that motivation to come back, but they have some serious big
incredible
players.
Fight. A lot of their players now, even a lot of their backs are playing in the French.
Yeah.
Not in the top 14, but in a couple of the divisions below, they're all playing. So I think that's going to improve their structures and the quality games that their players are getting. So it's great to see, in a sense, that, you know, you'd love to see Romania and Portugal are going to a World Cup now again. They drew with the USA and knocked them out of the last spot available. So we do want to see the game, you know, these teams developing, but that's not good for Welsh rugby. And I think in the last couple of months, obviously with Italy beating them as well in the Six Nations.
Do you think he'll survive?
Huge pressure. I don't know. I think it's the half of people are calling for his head. I think and you know, Stephen Jones is in there, someone I played against, know really very well. I think The problem is the depth, the amount of players they have. And
So
the
no one's
quality.
going to come in and fix it.
I don't think someone can come in with a magic wand now and fix them. I think they need to fix it themselves, get their best players out in the field. But again, Wales are a team that can get it right on the big occasions. So
If some of the injured players clear up, like, we wouldn't fancy seeing them in a knockout stages. I can say that without fear of contradiction. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
Now, to celebrate the Black Friday sale at Harvey Norman, we're giving away €100 Harvey Norman shopping voucher every day this week on Twitter, with the grand prize winner also coming away with a Canon EOS M50 MK2 camera and a Selfie QX10 photo printer. To be with the chance to win, tell us again who this superstar Portuguese footballer is, explaining why he really, really wants to come on the show.
Because I think it's the time to say something. And because I like you. As simple as that.
Right, you have to tell us who your guest is on our main Twitter page, @OffTheBall, and please make sure your DMs are open. That's how we contact you. Harvey Norman is the only place to shop for the best Black Friday deals on appliances, technology, furniture and bedding. We're back after this with Cathal Mullaney in studio to run through the weekend's Club GAA action. First, here's an emotional David Brady speaking to our own Aisling O'Reilly in the aftermath of his Ratoath side's very tight defeat to the Downs in the Leinster football semi-final at Croker. Take a look.
Tough way to lose in the end, but what's your feeling on the game?
Look, sure, it's hard losing at any time, but you know what? I'd expect nothing less from the players. When they were rock bottom and 5 points down and it was done and gone, I just went, I don't doubt you. And they came back and they showed heart, effort, determination, everything I've seen since the 21st of January. And it'd make you proud, but the words are hard because you're trying to tell the guys how much that will bring them on in life and in football and experience. And next year is their next opportunity to go back and learn from those experiences that we've had. And I said to them, it's been an absolute pleasure to be.
There's no rush. Take your time. It's tough. It's not easy to be here in Croke Park,
But it is easy. But it's hard when you see the disappointment in them. It's hard when you see the disappointment in young guys' faces that didn't even kick a ball, didn't even get to play. And I'd love to tell them, boys, you would look back on this and going, we needed that. That was one of the greatest things that ever happened to us. That lesson and that journey and everything else. And for me, I kind of said, I thanked them because it just put heart back in club for me. And that's so important because if you don't have a heart, you don't have a club, you don't have a community, you don't have... And you know what? Even today, and there was buses and I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of kids came from Ratoath. They're probably going home now and going, they don't really know who won or lost. Just knew they had probably one of the greatest days of their life since they got up this morning. And we brought a few kids from Ratoath on our team bus this morning. They nearly shot themselves when we had to get the blue light escort in the middle of traffic. But they're the important things. Yes, we look back and we review it, but it's great. It was one of the greatest honours I ever had, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant, and we stick together, and that's the important thing. So it is.
There you go. It's David Brady in conversation with Aisling O'Reilly. He's a one-man hype machine for the split season, it turns out. Really justifying the extra attention that the club season's getting. Carl, how are you?
I'm very well, lads. How are you?
They were very close.
Yeah. It was a good game by all accounts. I actually didn't see that one, but it was on television and lost by point in the end, I think. But he's had a great year. Like, I think we spoke about it one of the weeks previously as well. Is he a future Mayo manager in waiting? Certainly made a good dent with Ratoath this year. But he is, I think, again, the split season, I think once the dust is settled and we get into the inter-county season again next year, I think by and large the split season has been very successful. And I think a lot of the players, and even reading some of the papers again this morning, that some of the players have said the same, particularly the inter-county players, that they're delighted to get a proper run with their clubs. Maybe there's areas that need to be refined, but by and
Yeah,
large,
you can fix the
it's been
timings, I
successful.
think.
Yeah.
So we'll see, because there's definitely a lot of negativity still towards it from people who have a lot to say, and we'll see when the dust settles, when our first full year of it is taken into account, what the pros and cons were, and so far it seems like the pros are. There's definitely long periods of the year where we could be doing with something good happening. And anyway, look, we're getting into championship fixtures there. So the hurling game at the weekend, I saw Shane Stapleton speculate that it's one of the greatest club hurling matches ever.
Yeah.
With like frequently matches like this, everybody talks about them for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they disappoint. Something happens. There's an early red card or something. But not in this instance.
No, this was, I think, an inter-county level match. Ballygunner were under the cosh for a long time, and they managed to get it done. But the two teams, so well conditioned, very, very hard hitting match, very, very physical, and obviously the skill levels were brilliant as well. I think, they would have beaten a lot of inter-county teams at the weekend, either of those teams. And, Ballygunner underlining just how strong they are. And they play Ballya, who've got Tony Kelly, of course, in the final. So, the Munster Club Hurling Championship is a really difficult one to get out of. But Ballygunner, I think, probably still favourites to retain their All-Ireland title. I think maybe by a distance from what we've seen so far. The Galway final is going to a replay as well. And Ballyhale obviously will have a thing or two to say about it, you would think, too, down the line. But I think Ballygunner is still out in front.
What else happened over the course of the weekend?
Well, do you know what? I was on the way back yesterday in the car, and I listened to Moy Cullen against Strokestown on the radio on Shannon's side with Willie Hegarty.
All right.
Willie Hegarty. Fantastic stuff. There wasn't a score in the second half for 25 or 26 minutes, but it was a real tight game. Moy Cullen just got over the line just about. Probably didn't play as well as they would have thought, and they hammered Westport the week before, so they play Tour de Strand from Sligo in the final now in a couple of weeks' time. But you would think they would fancy themselves to have a right crack at the All-Ireland if they can come out of Connacht. And I think that the conditions over the weekend weren't brilliant for any of the matches, which is a pity. If we saw these games, and again it's back to that argument, if it was in August or September, how good would the matches be?
Even I was watching at the weekend, I was trying to keep track of my dad's home club in Galway, Dunmore McHale's. Like, they won the Galway Intermediate Club, and at the weekend they beat Ballyhonus, Nathan Murphy's hometown, of course, in the Connacht Championship. And like, ordinarily during the year you're not following these games. Like, I'm not keeping track of Dunmore's scores at all, and now all of a sudden you're watching it. Like, you're seeing the news that David Brady's been shoving the manager in the sideline, and all these stories, even like Luke Loughlin's story, or Jerome Johnston and Ballybay, and you're getting Paul Finlay on. All of this is lost, like, ordinarily speaking. So at least it's getting some breathing space, and we're getting a chance to, as you say, like, they are county level games, some of them, and the Ballygunner and the Pearson game was a perfect example of that. But finally it's getting
I just wonder, and I wonder, will that improve with time too, Shane, if like we persist with the split season and we continue with it and give it the space to breathe, that those storylines can generate over a couple of years, and kind of people, from different provinces become more accustomed to what's happening in other provinces, like they do in the inter-county scene. People
are starved of GA. Like, GA superfans are starved of action, so they're going to go to their club games and follow. Like, I've heard of people in even Monaghan travelling to neighbouring counties to watch club matches. Really, yeah. It's just literally mad for ball. And you can understand it at this time of year where people are like, right, it's November, dark evenings, there's something to do with the weekend. So yeah, long may it last.
Yeah, there was so much sport on last night. I know you were probably watching Mark Allen.
Oh, getting some abuse in the comments. Cal won't lie for not having Mark Allen in the performance rankings this morning. Can I just make the point that I made the case for him last night? I was written off, but to be fair, there was a lot happening. But
a lot happening last night.
Mark Allen, really, really incredible. 6-1 down, come back to win 10-7 against Ding, and like, his evening performance in the evening session was just unbelievable. There's a man like €250,000 or pounds picked up for the winner's check, and like, he'd beaten his good friend Jordan Brown earlier in the tournament. Lovely little hug between them before the match. Jack Lasowski, who was in incredible form, he beat him in the semi-finals. And then Ding, you're thinking in the afternoon, 6-1, Ding's got a cakewalk this. But he's lost 5 stone, Mark Allen, in the last number of months, and I know Ronnie O'Sullivan has been helping him kind of deal with the fitness side of it and the meditation. He's been sitting in the seat some of the sessions as well, kind of with his eyes closed and really relaxed. So he's only a World Championship away from a Triple Crown now. Yeah. Like, he's won the Masters already. So serious focus. And that was one of the great achievements in Irish sport across the weekend. Something we absolutely should mention.
And the fact that he's kind of worked on his fitness is an interesting one. That for the longer matches at the World Championship, he's referenced that he needs to be a little bit fitter to sustain.
But he was even saying like he was so out of shape that even some of the shots on the table he was finding it difficult, because when you're trying to almost stay off the cue ball or the other balls and not commit a foul, he was finding it difficult, and even reaching over to some positional shots, he just couldn't do it. So now he feels like a new man. He looks like half the person he was. 5 stone is a lot of weight to lose. It was nearly 5 stone. So yeah, fair play to him. I mean, he's a really, really interesting character, Mark Allen. Even in his interviews after the match and stuff, he's someone you can kind of listen to and go, yeah, he's pretty interesting. I saw him hit a 147 once in Mullaney. That's my claim to fame. But really, really good guy, and he's won 2 of his last 3 tournaments. So heading into the World Championships next April, he'll be one of the favourites. He'll be the top 5 or 6, I'd say.
Yeah.
So long may it last.
We should give a shout out to the Lochiel Camogie team who beat Schlockneil in the Ulster final. They had lost the previous 7 Ulster finals to them. So they turned that over, and they're through to the semi-finals. They're going to play Drum and Inch, and the other semi-final is going to be Vincent's against the Galway champions, who I've just momentarily lost there. It's Sarsfields. Oh yeah, okay, so Sarsfields, backbone by the McGraths. So they're the semi-finals and that as well over the weekend.
Yeah, and we were on about sport last night. Obviously the Ireland game, Leona Maguire did really, really well on the LPGA Tour. Just came up a little bit short, but still pocketed a check of $550,000, which is not to be sniffed at all. But she played really well. I mean, she didn't probably hit the heights. She had 63 on Saturday and 72 last night, I think it was. But a great end of the season at the Tour Championship for her. So
that was their season. Tour Championship end.
Yeah.
I was wondering because the prize money was ridiculous.
Yeah, the winner Lydia O'Connell got $2 million, and Leona Maguire was sole possession a second. She got $550,000, I think.
Not bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad. But I suppose the next step for her would be to win a major championship if she can do that next season. And then Seamus Power was top 5 as well last night in the PGA Tour, and Rory did brilliantly yesterday too. So quite a good day for the Irish. And then you had Josh Van der Fleer last night and Terry Kennedy, so it was all happening yesterday.
We're class at everything.
Yeah.
Golf,
Forget
snooker.
about the plucky underdog. We're back. We've got a different mindset now. Some news as well this morning that Harry Maguire looks poised to start for England in the World Cup later. So the English team is kind of seeping out through the media a little bit.
4-3-3. Is it 4-3-3 this?
Yeah, I think they're going to play 4 at the back. I think that's what Sky are reporting, I think, this morning.
Exciting attacking. That's what I read in the papers. So obviously they've leaked it.
Well, that group looks tricky to me for England. If they get on the back foot there at all, like Iran aren't a bad team. Wales, we've seen what they can do in the Euros, and the USA are dead intent on trying to get out of that group. So I mean,
well, Carlos Queiroz's style of football for Iran is putrid. So I'm interested to see how bad of a game it is today. Maybe
is the style of football across the World Cup going to be bad? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Temperatures, time of year, and generally World Cups tend to be built on decent defences. Would that be fair to say, rather than expansive attacking stuff?
We've had some really, really good group stages over the last couple of tournaments, but then as the tournaments have gone on, the football has not been good.
Yeah.
Saka instead of Foden
been less exciting. What?
Talk of Saka being in instead of Foden today, which is an interesting enough
really?
For the opening game. Yeah, I thought that was strange.
Can you not play them both?
I would have thought you could play them both, but the Sky team seems to have left Foden out,
right?
Which would be quite interesting. Talk as well, like Harry Kane is one of the players who's on about doing this, the rainbow captain's armband, and they're now questioning whether he's going to do it because there's threats of a yellow card before the match even begins.
Take the yellow card.
Yeah, take the yellow card.
Take the yellow card.
At least it would make a statement. Now, of course, from Southgate's point of view, he doesn't want Harry Kane on a yellow card before the match even starts. But I mean, it would send a statement if they're coming out and literally handing out yellow cards for players wearing a rainbow captain's armband. That's disgraceful. That's like them giving out about Denmark wearing the human rights T-shirts, So I think, teams need to stand up. I know they're going to take a knee, I think. England have said that before the Iran game. Yeah. So, look, that's something, but we're going to need some strong gestures.
All right. Anything else, Cathal?
Well, that's about it. We've gone through most of it. Just to recap those kickoff times today at the World Cup. So England play Iran at 1, then Wales and the USA meet from 7. Both of those games in Group B, and then the middle game of the day at 4 o'clock in Group A between the Netherlands and Senegal. That's at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
All right. Good stuff, Carl. Thanks very
lads.
much for that. OTB AM brought to you with Gillette every morning in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. We're going to talk to David Sneyd in just a moment about Ireland over the last couple of weeks, and Miguel Delaney's going to join us in about 15 minutes time as well from Qatar, maybe a little bit later as well. Now, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Whether you're travelling to work in the morning or training in the evening, Braeburn will give you the boost you need, available at Apple Green locations nationwide. Each week we give one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. To enter, just check out @OffTheBall on Twitter, like and retweet our Braeburn competition post, and you'll be in the draw. Up next, as I said, David Sneyd live in studio to review Norway and Malta. First, here's Vinnie Perth talking about the influence Lionel Messi will have on this World Cup. Take a look.
I think that's the key to them. If they can score enough goals, obviously Messi. I think most people would love to see Messi win this World Cup. I think that would be, and we'll go on to Portugal, but wouldn't mind a Portugal-Argentina World Cup final. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, and let's sort out who's the best once and for all. But I think Martinez will be the key to it if he scores enough goals. I know their record coming in is really strong and they're unbeaten, but they haven't played a lot of European nations because of the friendlies, and we play Nations League football here, so they aren't able to come over. So they probably haven't been tested to the same level of some of the European sides who, on paper, their form is up and down at different stages. So that's the only question mark on them. What will they be like when they're tested against some of the best teams? And I think we have to also point out, when it comes to, say, Argentina or Brazil, who are rightly favourites or thereabouts, is the World Cup. Once you go to that sort of last 16's knockout football, and anything can happen, and I'm not convinced Argentina are where we think they are, and I think I have to be convinced on them. But they certainly have the players. They've got some players at really high level. But at the same time, I have to question: is Martinez, for example, the player we think he is? Will he spearhead that attacking line for them, give them enough goals? And for me, they look a little bit short of someone like Brazil. But we're going to find out, aren't we?
Yeah, we definitely are going to find out. David Sneyd is with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, good morning.
I was allowed to flick at various stages during the game. He was flicking as well.
I know, I was listening on the way in. You're flicking between your NFL and you were between your snooker.
Snooker had to be done.
I know, yeah.
It was difficult.
Yeah, it was. There's no getting away from it. Like, it kind of, if you look back, I was kind of thinking back to the first half of the Norway game, and that was really, really disappointing, and kind of just like, I mentioned it in my kind of report on the game, kind of a bit just tepid. It was just very kind of almost lackadaisical how we were passing the ball. And then against Malta, you're kind of just hoping for it. I was saying it before, just a bit of a reaction and a bit of kind of just a bit of pace and upping it a little bit, and it wasn't really there. And but then I was like, when you had me notes at the end of the first half, there were still little moments that were created in the final third that they just couldn't see off or couldn't finish off. And you're kind of, I was kind of just even thinking about it last night and then again this morning. It was like, it's the kind of game that Ireland have been involved in a fair bit over the last little while, and you're kind of thinking, well, what's been different? And you were kind of looking for that little bit of creativity and a bit more of a spark, because that's what the whole premise for the last couple of years has been about, trying to find a different way of playing. And it was still a lot of the same struggles. But then on another night, you could go into that game at half time 2-0 up, and maybe it gives a bit of a different complexion. It's just about having that little bit of clinical nature in the final third when it did come, because there was a couple of moments where opportunities could have been like really scored, really.
Yeah. Okay, so we gave you the very difficult task of picking three players who had impressed over the two games. I mean, maybe the criteria are a bit...
But even the nature of the games, like the players, so obviously in terms of who impressed, like Callum O'Dowda was one of them. But then I still thought there were still moments where he was very disappointing. But he just had those flashes. Obviously he had that burst of pace, and that's something that Stephen Kenny has spoken about, especially in those wing back positions that he wants. That's why he's kind of name checked Neil Ferrugia or Shamrock Rovers, because he wants to have that little bit of explosiveness in wing back positions. And I think something like that will stand out. I think you can obviously mention it as well, the fact that coming on as a sub and having that burst of pace and hits the post, those little moments I think will stand out for him as well. And like something like in a game like that against Malta, that's what sticks in the head.
Yeah,
like, it's nothing spectacular.
Okay,
there's no one kind of saying, do you know what, I was the main man over these two games and really like dominated or whatever.
Maybe that's a better way for us to have this to frame this conversation. What's Kenny looking for from these games? Because like obviously he wanted 2 wins. He's got a defeat and a win, and I think they'll be disappointed with what happened against Norway. But ultimately, these games don't matter, right? In the long cycle of when we come back to look at the Kenny era, we're not going to go, those two friendlies, when the World Cup was on and everyone was not really paying that much attention, they're the ones that stick out in my mind. It'll be something else.
Yeah, I think that's the way people would be thinking it from the outside, I suppose. But if you're in there, like Stephen Kenny would be looking at it thinking, well, like Will Smallbone, for example, like I know people are saying, well, why didn't he get a run? But like Kenny kind of brought him into the squad to have a look at him. Didn't give him game time, but he did that. He did that with Callum O'Dowd when Callum O'Dowd came back in the previous get together for this, and he kind of name checked him, wanted to just get him involved and get him in the mix and just see how he was around the place again, having not really.
So they don't hothouse players. That, they don't throw them in without a full understanding of.
Kind of, yeah. And even if you go back to. Like, I agree with you in the sense that like the results, if Ireland had a loss last night, there would have been recriminations, definitely, without a doubt. And so it's not a case of like, these games will be pinpointed, but there could be little things within them that for Stephen Kenny would be important. You know what I mean? So like if you even go back, you go back to as far back to say the summer before last. Summer before last when they had played Andorra and they got the first win, and it was the first kind of time they had a bit of a training camp and stuff together. And like after that, you're hearing about players who are kind of standing up a little bit and are actually kind of having a good impact around the place. And Kenny kind of is able to impose his personality a little bit on the squad. So there's stuff that happens, say, behind the scenes. And that's stuff that you'll find out with, say, Will Smallbone. I wouldn't be surprised with someone like Will Smallbone if he goes back and plays well for Stoke and is playing games, playing regularly. Even though he wasn't involved, I think if he's made a good impression around the place and how he settled in, he could be in the mix for March. And if you look at how Stephen Kenny treated, I would say, Michael Obafemi, even when you look at the whole point of like when he pulled out of a squad because he felt as if he wasn't fit enough to play and didn't want to be involved, and they were the friendlies with, I think it was Lithuania, wasn't I remember, the start of the year. And just how he dealt with that, he kind of reintroduced them then, and then obviously it paid off because he'd done so well against Scotland. They're the positives. They're kind of scratching around for thinking, well, what's the benefit of the last couple of games? And that's probably the height of what you can get from it, because the games themselves and how Ireland played and what you would expect and where you would expect Ireland to be at this point of playing, it's probably not where you would expect them to be or where you would want them to be.
Do we give Stephen Kenny any leeway for the fact that Omabamidele, Jason Knight, Parrott, these lads weren't involved in these friendlies? Like, there's players there who might have made a difference.
But that's going to happen. That's international football.
That's fair.
Come March, those three lads could not be available again. There could be other players, like if, heaven forbid, like if Josh Cullen's not available.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's going to be a big issue. And I know Stephen Kenny referenced the kind of depth of the central defenders, and that's it's significant there. That's actually a good thing. The Troy Parrott, that's probably one disappointment in terms of not being able to see in this window would be to continue with Obafemi and Troy Parrott together, just because that was a partnership that obviously Kenny was beginning to formulate a little bit, done well against Scotland, home and then away. Again, opportunities, like when you think back to Troy Parrott's opportunity when he was 1-on-1, you're thinking, oh God, like if they could have had a totally different complexion on how the year ended. But I think that's just the nature of international football. You'd be a very lucky manager to have your best team available all the time, especially for a team like Ireland. And it's just about having that structure in place where lads can drop in and hopefully be able to do a job within it.
So that's the point of Smallbone coming in, seeing how the squad works. If you end up playing, you'll be playing in that role or this role, so you need to keep an eye on those, and you're not overwhelmed by this. And then when you do come in, pick you this time.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's it. Like, and in fairness, Kenny has spoken about that, and you speak to people around it. That's kind of what he wants to do. You know what I mean? And it's also the whole point of, I know people were saying even like on the coverage about like when Jeff Hendrick, it always seems to be someone like Jeff Hendrick or whoever comes on, and people are saying, why is that? Because it's clear that's probably now going to be Jeff Hendrick's role for Stephen Kenny, and he wants to see how he does in terms of a fella coming. He's no longer going to be first choice in that starting 11. He's going to be that experienced head coming on for 15 minutes. So like, it's not. But like, we've seen so much change over the last couple of years. This is now what's coming for the next little while. We couldn't have an idea of what the 11 is going to be, and these are the kind of the first.
How does he respond to being a sub?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean. Like an experienced player, is he gonna throw a bit of a wobbler and not put a shift in? And like that's just the nature of international football again. Like, it's the fellas' roles and how they are in the team change, and that's how Kenny has to manage it. And that's what he's probably been looking for, because you would imagine come March time, depending on who's fit, that'll be someone like a Jeff Hendrick's role.
Okay, the other players you mentioned for picked out for moments rather than impressed. Is that what we're saying this?
That's fair, isn't it? Like, there was no one really, was there? Like,
No, there wasn't. So Alan Brown's next on your list, obviously. Scored a great goal. Alan Brown is always, it feels like, on the verge of being a really, really important player for us, but hasn't quite stepped into that bit where he's nailed on to start, first choice. He's going to influence games.
And he does, though. That's the thing. He has an ability to affect games in the final third in terms of getting into the box. When I mentioned at the start about little moments in the first half that could so easily have been a goal, like it was him getting on the end of Doherty's little flick through the nutmeg in right on half time. Like, he's the one who kind of seems to have that, not so much the licence to do it, but just the actual awareness and ability to actually pick runs and get into the box. Like you go back to the game against Belgium Summers well, where he did it there, where he got the equaliser there and he scored. It was in the first game of the previous campaign under Kenny with the Serbia away to Serbia with a header. Like, he's capable of getting in the box, and you've got when you are relying on trying to get goals from as many different places as possible, those little moments where you can see him bursting in and like doing that's gonna again should stick in the manager's mind, because you need as many players as possible who can affect games in the box.
Yeah, okay. Jamie McGrath.
Just because he had so much energy about him, he looked comfortable on the ball. And again, another player who is coming back into it, having, like, when you look at where he was after making his debut again the Portugal game in Faro, and how things seemed to be going for his career, it looked as if he was only going one way, that this was the building blocks to possibly, not so much maybe becoming a Premier League player, but maybe decent championship level, and then the move to Wigan, just
disaster.
Nightmare for him, absolute nightmare. Probably at the worst possible time for him, because obviously Wigan were flying in League One and the manager didn't want to change it. He's had to go back to Scotland, but then loses his place completely in the squad from a position where he was actually, you're thinking he's in the team here, and then he's not in the squad. And again, in terms of positives, just the reaction that he had, I suppose, coming back in, and like anyone who knows him, obviously he wouldn't have been around the League of Ireland, but he's just like a good person, and he's a good fella. Like, I'd say he's one of those players who wouldn't have got into a squad and thinking, this is where I am now, and regardless, I think he would have understood why he wasn't in the squad.
Where did he play last night?
See, he's seen that probably more so off the left, in terms of on that. Like, there was a couple of little moments. He was obviously on set pieces on that side. There was a couple of little moments of nice intricate play where he was on that side. He knocked in a nice little cross for the back post, actually, for Matt Doherty, that led to that chance for Alan Brown. But he was kind of drifting a little bit. Again, this is where I think he has plenty to offer. So long as he's actually playing football, now that he's playing, I think he'll stay in. I can't see him not. Is that he can kind of, it's what I suppose what's the term, like bit of fluidity or whatever in formation. Like, he can be on that, say, on the left side of a three in midfield, or even if he can drop back as a two, because he's just so technical on the ball. Yeah. But then if you need him as a bit of a 10, if you need to float him off as a almost kind of playing off a striker, he can do that as well. But like yesterday, he seemed to do a lot. Last night he seemed to do a lot of kind of the damage, more so kind of on the left side essentially, which is where he was when he made his debut against Portugal. And
so this is a depth piece for Ireland if he's playing regularly, that will compete with
Jason Knight, I would imagine.
Mullaney,
yeah,
a bit.
Yeah, I think Mullaney
will be ahead of him.
Yeah, Mullaney's a different in the sense that he's sort of maybe more so someone who could almost be alongside Cullen a bit deeper. If you were having him a bit further forward, I don't think he gives you the same level maybe of just control and possession as a Knight or Jamie McGrath. He just gives you that little bit of aggression and a bit more energy, and a bit like in the Scotland game during the summer, when
a lot of aggression.
Like, yeah. But you know what? Like, we need it. Like, that was Ireland's best performance of the year, and again, something like that can't be forgotten as well. You know what I mean? Like, that's especially at home in front of those fans. Like, that's what they kind of respond to. It's like Stephen Kenny referenced that after the game that Norway paid. For some reason, he was asked a couple of questions about the Norway game after the Malta game last night, and he was saying, Norway paid Ireland a bit more respect because he sees Ireland as a bit more of a possession-based team now. But it's more so a case of teams know what they can do against Ireland now, that they can just sit in, because that's
what you're going to do with it.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Whereas,
so it's actually less respect. In a way.
No, it's just not so much less respect. I thought it's just kind of, it's just like from saying, well, this is what we can do. Like, this is very easy to deal with. Do you know what I mean? And I would say you're looking at a combination of, you need to have that level of control and passing and being able. You just need it in football now. But you also, with Ireland, a lot of the strengths are still in that just little bit of nastiness and a little bit of aggression that brings a lot more out of some of the players in that squad.
The 3 disappointing players, David, not quote unquote disappointing, but Gavin Bazunu, like I thought at the start of the game,
he's finished. He's gone.
He's gone. He's finished. He's brutal.
Yeah.
Like his distribution was actually okay at the start of the game, and then there was a couple of nervy moments, and you're thinking, this is very un-Gavin Bazunu like.
Yeah, that was it. That you know what, that was my thinking exactly, Shane. Yeah, like I was just thinking, this wasn't the Gavin Bazunu that you've been used to seeing in terms of just a couple of shaky ones, like that simple pass out to Josh Cullen in the first half against Norway, and I think I can't remember who the chance fell to, but if it's Haaland, it's a goal. Like,
yeah,
you know, and there was that, and then there was a moment where the cross came in, and he kind of stuttered, he kind of checked, kind of second guessed himself and came out when the ball kind of just bounced him off the chest, and it was just that little bit of hesitation that hadn't been there. Now in the second half he made a couple of good saves, and it was like he kind of what you would expect. That's what I'm saying about, like, even with the lads who impressed, you're just picking out, this is what managers are going to do, isn't it? This is what coaching staff will do. They're going to just pick out those little moments, because like I was at the Man City Southampton game earlier in the season when it was obviously, say, Haaland against Bazunu, and it could have been 8 or 9-0 if it wasn't for Gavin Bazunu. But the thing that stood out again, even in that Southampton team, was just the nature of how he was commanding that defence, and there was lads dropping their heads. Like, I think after Haaland's goal, which I think made it 3-0, a couple of the Southampton defenders had collided with each other trying to close them down. Both of them ended up on their backside, and Bazunu was like a doorman lifting the two of them up by the neck to say, come on lads, get back up. And then him and Ward-Prowse, obviously he's the captain, the two of them were in quite a lot of dialogue throughout the game in terms of trying to keep their heads up here a little bit, and that was quite telling in the sense of how he seemed to be actually organised. And so when I speak about Bazunu disappointing, it's just because you just expect him now to be faultless. That's probably why you can think any little kind of maybe sense of vulnerability, you're going to think that's not like him, which is it's harsh, but listen, you just asked me to do it, so
also on your list are Egan and Obafemi.
Well, Egan, because he lost Ostergaard for the goal, like, so easily. Like, I don't think there was much of a check for the goal in terms of the run. I don't think, like, that was extremely disappointing for him, because again, similar to Bazunu, you just don't expect it from him. He's very good. Seems to be very good at commanding that box and being organised and not getting caught in the hop like that. So then that was that, and then Obafemi, just because you're kind of looking for something different. I kind of reference this in again, that piece of it after. You're kind of looking for something a little bit different from him, where he kind of senses how a game is going. This is in the Norway game, and he didn't really adapt to it. And you're kind of, that's perfectly fair, because he's 22 years old. He's rebuilding his career in the Championship, having burst through at Swansea. He's had his injury issues, blah blah blah. But then you're kind of, that's just another little indication that there's still a fair bit to go in his progression, and you just hope that at club level he continues to play regular football. So when it does come to those days with games with Ireland, he's just going to learn from it and have that bit of experience. Like, it's like he's been probably the standout in terms of for excitement for Ireland this year. But that was probably a bit of a disappointing end to the year for him, I'd say.
You'd be surprised to hear there's a lot of negativity in our YouTube comments this morning from people who've watched Ireland over the last 2 weeks, particularly around the manager. So the referendum on the manager is like, wow, it's always a massive overreaction. Like, again, I do think that ultimately what happens in the qualifying campaign is going to decide whether or not we think of the Kenny era as a success or failure.
Absolutely.
And that's harsh because the draw is horrific. But them's the breaks. And what's your assessment of where we are at the moment?
Of where we are, I'd say it's an interesting one. Because it's going into this campaign, it's like what you said there about the referendum. Like, I don't know, it's very tough to kind of judge. Maybe that in itself is a bit of an indictment of still don't know 100% what's going to happen, because the draw is very bad and all the rest of it, and extremely tough. And even this, if you look at these two friendly games, it's kind of a bit of a microcosm of what the year has been, where it's been moments. Like, in terms of sustained, there was a good half against Scotland away from home, and that was like very, very positive. But then the nature of how the second half finishes, nothing's really being sustained. There's been some elements of progress. There's still been some signs where you're like, this isn't working in terms of, I would say, well, I know it was said, but the set pieces against, like, that's against Norway, but like, you just can't do that in international football at any level. To be caught on the hop in the nature they did with those two set pieces, and it could be harsh, but like, you're just going to get killed. And like, teams like France and the Netherlands, they're not going to be relying on set pieces. They have those threats.
Also have that.
They will also have that as part of their army. But then it's just been, I just feel as if the campaign, you're hoping everything over the course of a couple of years of work where Kenny has been working with these players, that it does click and come together. And I say click, and it kind of seems a bit ambiguous, but you're just thinking, because there has been some signs of, you know what, how Ireland have been able to play away from home and also at times at home, just being able to sustain it and get that mix of what we were saying earlier about having that aggression but also keeping that level of control. Now it's asking a lot, because there's still that point of, there's still a lot of players there who are just naturally inconsistent, and that's the reason where they are in their careers with clubs. So it's how do you kind of work a system whereby you just find that consistency. And at international level, it's even more difficult, you know. So short answer, I'll be honest, and maybe it is a bit of a sorry, you don't know what to expect really in March. Like, there's been, again, the Portugal game, Serbia game, they've done well in games against better teams, but you're kind of still thinking, well, what's going to happen? And you know, that's just the honest.
How do you feel the core fans are leaning, David? Like, is it a 50-50 split when it comes to the Kenny question, or is there a definite, you know, the die-hard Irish fans go to every single game? Do you feel like there's a way in which they're leaning at the minute? I
don't know, like, there was 700 travelling fans in that match yesterday. Like, that's an indication in terms of, I would say a hardcore of, obviously they're still buying into the team. I know obviously I wasn't there last night, and you see some of the lads who were there obviously covering it. There was like a few boos maybe at half time just because of the nature of the performance. Like, I would say the Norway game, being in the crowd, obviously in the crowd for that one, there wasn't like mutiny happening. Like, there was disappointment. It was subdued, but maybe that's because it's a friendly as well. Like, I kind of go back to use that the Serbia game in the qualifiers when Ireland came back and got that late draw, and I was thinking at that point, the crowd, the energy that the crowd gave the team, but also that was on the back of maybe some great saves from Bazunu, but I think it was also because they saw how the team was playing. Like, that energy, I don't think it's maybe still at that same level. Like, I'll be honest, I don't really go off social media and the comments. Like, some of the articles I put up online, I made the mistake a couple of times of looking at comments and you're like, oh my god, like, why do I even do this job? What is the point? Do you know what I mean? But I think there's been enough. I think there's been enough kind of sporadic signs of performances where it's actually looked very coherent and players buying into it and understanding that you would think, you know what, there should be enough goodwill there within that group that it could click in the qualifiers. The problem is, it's been such a tough draw that regardless, Ireland could play absolute perfect games in some of those games and still get nothing in them.
Yeah.
So that's what
I think if that happens, like if France beat us 2-1 and we play really well, you'd have to say most Irish fans are reasonable enough to go, well, that was a good performance.
Yeah. And that's it. And see, that's part of the element I would say with it in terms of where I'm a bit conflicted, is in the sense that, like, when Stephen Kenny took the job, obviously he came in, and maybe he made it all for his own back, because he came in not so much promising a revolution, but saying things are going to change in terms of the style, in terms of the performances, and in terms of how Ireland do things. And it's happened to a degree, but then when you have performances like last night and against Norway, people are saying, well, hold on, this isn't what we all signed up for. So that's where people can come back to it. So it's the whole thing of, well, if results are the only thing that matter, but then last night, let's move on, it's grand, not a bother. But the whole point is that it's not, because where the Irish football is, and where or I think a lot of people who are invested in Irish football want is to be able to see a consistency of change of how Ireland do play and how they operate. But it's I think it's at the start of that whole process still.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean? And it might not be Stephen Kenny further down the line who maybe really sees the benefits of it, but it has to start somewhere.
Yeah. And
I just think you just have to, it's not a case of sticking with it. Like, football has changed and you have to, it's moving with it. Yeah. Otherwise you're going to be left behind. Like, I'm not just saying, like, I did an interview with Robbie Brady about this a couple of weeks, last week, and he made the point as well. He just said, like, what do people want? Do they want us to be backs against the walls, fighting for our lives every single game against every single team?
Yeah,
and like, I know Jay Lamar, but it was great. He just said, listen, nobody's shy anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes, Shane.
You know, like, no one is. Like, in terms of systems, you're coming up against teams who can be rigid and frustrate you. And the nature of where Ireland are at, they haven't got, at the moment, the calibre of players who, as a whole, not just individuals, but as a whole, who can win, say, a 3 or 4.
But do we not have a calibre of player that's above Malta?
For sure. That's why Ireland won the game. That's why Ireland won the game, and in the game we're comfortable, other than a couple of moments on the counter. Like, Ireland dominated the ball. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if, like, there was games not too long ago when Ireland were getting absolutely bossed by Georgia home and away. Like, that's not going to happen now to the same degree. Like, Georgia, again, another team who they've got one of the most exciting players now in European football in, well, Cravadonna, that's what he's called, isn't he? But like, but what I'm saying is that that's what's changed. One good thing that's changed, I think, under Stephen Kenny now with Ireland is that seeing Ireland being absolutely bossed and outclassed by teams home and away isn't going to happen. But it's that next step of being able to just consistently do that and still win. Do you know what I mean? Like,
That concern I have is, you know, when you say if we lose 2-1 to France and play well, I think there'll be a little bit of empathy there for Stephen Kenny. I almost feel like it's at the level now next March where it's entirely down to results. Like, and I accept that. Like, if
I agree with you. No, I agree with you.
Like, if we lose 2-1 to France and play really, really well, and we lose the next game, he's gone regardless. And I'd feel sorry for him because the performance against France is.
I'm not sure if he'd be gone.
No, I don't think.
But I agree with you. No, but
the surge would be like.
No, but I agree. I agree with you now. Where it is actually, from the outside point of view, and for all the people, maybe even fans nowadays, like they said, you know what, we've seen what you're trying to do in terms of changing it. You've seen them with the players you've brought in and given chances to players who may be being eased out of it. That's all been great. But no, 100%. Like, I think everybody here, like, of course, you're going to take beating France 1-0 if it's absolutely brutal, no matter how it happens. Do you know what I mean?
David's staying with us, so I got to tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Brian O'Driscoll meeting Easton Asewa. Splonk is live at 3. Our documentary at 4 is The Brawl, which is obviously Mayo and Meath. OTB Gold is Michael Owen on his life after football, and the show is live tonight with Joe in this chair with Monday Night Rugby and the football show set to be stacked this evening. So be sure to tune in. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. And we're live every morning with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless Shave, Magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. After the break, we're going to talk World Cup.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
It's not okay for him to be fine in a test match like that. It's a fulcrum position where everything runs through 9 and 10. You don't get to be fine in matches like that where you start.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
Off the Ball Daily. A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, a slight tangent, the crappy quiz, and you had to be there.
5 goals in 20 minutes. It's just, you can't do that. It's the Premier League. You can't do that.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless Shave, Magnificent Mo.
Right, we're talking about the World Cup. David Sneyd still with us. Who's going to win? What do you think? And what's your instinct on the actual football side of it?
I do actually really fancy Brazil. Like, I know it's probably the most obvious thing in the world to say, but you look at the level of the depth of talent they have throughout the pitch. Although I'll be honest, I was still part of me was shocked that Dani Alves is still knocking about. But like the amount of talent that they have, I just think, how can you not? Like, because I know people are saying, oh well, like, will a strong defence win, say, a World Cup? But I don't know. I just think like the spark they have throughout the pitch, and like obviously Vinicius Junior and see Neymar. It's just, I just think they have that little level of solidity to go with it, you know. But it's probably the most obvious thing in the world to always say Brazil for a World Cup. But I just think, that's who I'm going for.
The news this morning, the CEO of the English FA has told the BBC that FIFA will book Harry Kane if he wears the One Love armband in the game today. Like the booking, take the booking. No, because Miguel pointed out on Twitter earlier on, none of the football federations are actually doing anything significant to protest this World Cup in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
They were going to wear an armband. That's like, look how brave we are, we're wearing an armband. And now, because of a booking, they might not do that. You know.
Like, it's like what you say about being meaningful. If they view this as, if England FA view this as this is their protest, this is how that they're going to do it, well, then you have to stick by it and do it. They're going to take the knee as well, aren't they? I think that Gareth Southgate was saying that. Like, I'm conflicted with this in the sense of, and I wrote a piece about this, right? And everyone's known about this. Like, you're either standing up against what's going on or you're not. You can't like have half measures on it. Do you know what I mean? So like, what by them wearing the captain's armband, the One Love captain's armband, like what are they trying to say by that? What's their thinking behind that?
There was a detail which I had missed. So one of the Qatari organisers, so it's clearly a member of the ruling family, was doing media training and was asked a question about gay rights, and he was like, but it's our rules, of course, homosexuality is a crime. It's illegal like most places, right? There's kind of silence in the room as he looks around going, right? I can't remember who tweeted it yesterday. So perhaps there is more significance to this than we see and we think. Yeah. I'm with you largely. I think that if you're going to do something good and do something big.
Because I kind of think the way it is now, even, and it's always been the case that obviously players have players. I think more so now. Like, I made the point, like Messi, say Ronaldo, and maybe it's like, oh, you can't put the way it's even some of the conversations has been about it. Oh well, players are just players, as if they haven't got a clue what's going on in the world. Do you know what I mean? Or as if they haven't got a clue what any of these issues are. Now maybe some of them don't, but I just think that actually players have so much power now. And you've seen it, say, what happened with stuff in the Premier League and all the rest of it, and over the last little while, with again the anti-discrimination campaigns that have been happening and relatively successful. Although we've stopped taking the knee, I just think players have so much more power now, where they could have been the ones to actually force something significant to happen in this. Like I made the point that Messi and Ronaldo they're the two biggest icons of this game, probably the two best players who have ever played the game at the same time, coming to the end of a World Cup. And they've both been silent, totally silent. Well, other than Ronaldo. Ronaldo kind of said, well, like his biggest issue was talking about, well, it's happening in the kind of in the winter time or whatever, over there and stuff, as if that was one of the issues that was really significant about the whole lot of it.
People keep bringing it up. I'm like,
I know
it's a bit different. It's just because it's different. It changed. Like I thought it was a bit weird as well. Let's be honest, it is more so because they had said it's going to still happen during the summer, exactly.
So that was the first of them.
Yeah, So I kind of think that this whole thing of where players maybe can get let off the hook. Because they're the ones who have to go there. Well, they don't have to go there. If they actually and listen, it wasn't so long ago in this country that homosexuality was illegal. Do you know what I mean? But for the World Cup to be happening there when something like that, a basic fundamental right where it's literally illegal to be homosexual, and also you have the level of what Amnesty International have been talking about in terms of literally modern slavery with workers, like people, humans going in and dying. And people saying, well, I'll wear an armband, or they'll go on an airplane flying over to the thing that's named. Was it the thing in
rainbow?
You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, that almost to me smacks is even worse, because you're acknowledging what's going on. You're saying, you know what, this is disgraceful, but this is what we're going to do about it.
Do you know what?
It's so empty. Like, it really is. I'll be honest. Like, I just think, fair enough, you're speaking about it, so that's something at least. Yeah. But if you're going to speak about it, have actual serious action about it. And this is where I'm saying about FIFA and all the rest. Country, it's the World Cup. Players and the countries here are the ones who have had the power about this. If they really wanted to actually affect a bit of change, they could have done so. But it's clear that it's they're just going along with the status quo. And
it'd be weak if they pulled out of the armband thing because of the threat of a red card before the game. Like you talk about famous red cards in World Cups, Beckham kicking Simeone or Zidane headbutting. I know, but what I'm saying is, if he takes a yellow card before the game and then Harry Kane picks up an innocuous yellow card 10 minutes in for something stupid, and then he's sent off, that highlights the fact it's one of the most famous red cards in World Cup history. Then because his first yellow was for standing up for LGBT rights.
Again, that's the other side of this, is that by going and constantly talking about the issues the whole time, then Qatar don't get the global kudos for staging. Oh, look what you managed to do from the rubble of the desert. You built all these stadiums. How did you do that?
Well, even
it's slave labour. Lots of people died.
But even that, there's obviously that, and the whole thing of, say, journalists going, I understand that, and it's been highlighted for so long in terms of all these issues, it has been. And then part of the reason when you're there, I was reading colleague Gavin Cooney's stuff about trying to get to the match yesterday, and the bus driver getting lost and stuff. But then the stadium, people streaming out of the stadium early into the second half, and it's just this is the opening game of a World Cup in a country that, let's be honest, should not be hosting the World Cup, does not really care about football. It's obviously being used for something far bigger. And then you've got Ecuador fans in there chanting, saying we want beer. You've got nearly a 3/4 empty stadium in the host's first game of a World Cup. It just shows you what an absolute sham it is. It really does. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there'll be great moments on the pitch that'll happen, and there'll be moments where fans and all will have a great time over there. But like what you're saying there, I just can't. I'm still finding it difficult just to comprehend how it's got to this point. I really am.
Money. Virgil van Dijk has said he will wear the armband, and if he's booked, then we'll make a decision as what to do for the other games, because obviously the bookings will toll.
That's even better. Well, that's well then. So let them do it, and then like you'll see what happens. You're gonna have maybe like players, some of the best players in the world, being suspended from the tournament, and then it just makes an absolute sham of it even more.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
you know what I mean?
Could you take FIFA to court? Would that be? Is that possible? I don't know if you.
Well,
can.
It's unprecedented, so it doesn't know where it goes.
It's just. Listen, all this stuff about taking the bookings and all the rest of it, like they could have, if they had to have all come together, beforehand and said, you know what, this is abhorrent, we cannot stand by this. Are you telling me that something couldn't have happened, something couldn't have changed? If they wanted to really force like, a significant change, that's some of the most powerful in terms of sport and individuals in the world.
Well, if you had Messi and Ronaldo both saying something together, you know.
Yeah, well, you came together for that bleeding, what was it, the thing on Instagram, sorry for my language there, like, was it the post? Was it for Louis Vuitton or something like that? Or there's some chess thing?
Was it Pepsi or something?
Well, I don't know what it was. But so they're capable of getting in a room together when it suits them, and something like that. And this is what I'm saying. This is why I can't get over where players at that point can still get a total free pass on this, where like of course you know what's going on.
Well, most of the players at some point have been taking money somewhere along the way that they're a little bit uncomfortable about.
Well, yeah,
and that sometimes it's not too late to stun people with their lack of gratitude by saying, yeah, I did take your money, but I actually think it's where you got your money is pretty abhorrent. I mean,
we're all filled with contradictions, I suppose, and it's easy for me to sit here being slightly angry, having gotten soaking wet coming into the studio this morning and be complaining about something happened in the desert. But
I do feel some sympathy with, like, say, Wales, who are in their first World Cup since '58, right? And they're there, and they qualified for this tournament. It was in 2010. It was decided through a massively corrupt process that it was going to be here, and you're like, we're going to give up this, but and that whole point about every government in the world is happy to do business with Qatar and Saudi Arabia and China and America and other,
And they're in the awkward situation of being in the group with Iran as well, who, the Ukrainian FA have called for them to be expelled because of their support of Russia.
I know, but could the Iranian team make a statement about the women of Iran? I mean, they really could. They could use their platform to be like, yeah, we stand with our women. That would be amazing.
But even like Carlos Queiroz' press conference on a few days ago, talking about when he was being asked about this, and he's like asking the reporter who's asking the questions about what's going on, and he's asking him, who does he work for? He's like, how much are you going to pay me to answer this question and stuff? And I'm like, that's not how it works, I don't think.
No. No, people's ignorance of the way that the world works is, I don't know, maybe he thought that was a brilliant strategy, and maybe it plays really well with this is the thing, the Iranian FA.
Yeah, possibly. But even how I'm speaking about it now, this is probably naive in the extreme for me talking about this in terms of it's probably the point for Qatar where they're probably thinking, like we were saying about that media advisor, well, this is homosexuality is illegal throughout the world. You know what I mean? Like for them, they're thinking, well, our way of life is how. What they're trying to spread out there, I suppose, isn't it? That's
our country, our rules.
Do you know what I mean? And okay, that's fair enough. But then surely it should be, well, actually, no, that's not what should be happening here. And then you see it then yesterday as well, isn't it? The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is beside Infantino. So you know what's happening. You know what's kind of coming down the line then, don't you, for the World Cup bidding in 2030, isn't it?
It'd be very interesting to see where that one is. I mean,
well, Erdogan was there as well, wasn't he? The Turkish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
But then it's also, don't get me wrong, like the next World Cup after this is going to be in America, isn't it? America and
Canada and Mexico.
Don't get me wrong, like there's so much about American society that is absolutely
Well,
disgusting.
Trump could build a wall between two of the host nations in the meantime, So anyway, on that happy note, England-Iran kick off this afternoon, and then it is Wales and the USA this evening. All right, there's 3 games though. Am I missing a game?
Holland,
Senegal, Netherlands.
Yeah,
decent game.
That should be good. Yeah. Right. OTB AM brought to you live with Gillette in association with Movember. Effort to shave, magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. My thanks to David Sneyd for joining us in studio. Shane, your Monday Club, first one
in the books. I should mention before we finish, Ger, that Murray Kinsel's tweeting us as well, a report that Eddie Jones is on the brink of agreeing an 8-year deal as USA head coach through until their home 2031 World Cup. So we'll wait and see if that plays out. But 8 years, decent contract if it happens.
Yeah, there you go. Right, we're back tomorrow. Plenty of reaction to the first full day of World Cup action. Stephen Ferris will reflect on the autumn internationals, plus plenty more besides. Right now, we're going to leave you with some of the best from the Sunday pay-per-view, where John Duggan was joined by Roy Curtis and Tommy Martin. Enjoy and see you tomorrow.
I think maybe the best place, we'll get the politics out of the way before we can talk about the football, and there's so much to talk about in terms of the writing and obviously all the good writers, Roy, and the Gianni Infantino stuff, I suppose, is maybe the best place to start, the front story in the Sunday Independent today.
Yeah, I mean, you hear political satirists talking about how they've been rendered obsolete in the post-Trump age. You know, the antics of Trump and Boris and Putin and Liz Truss are simply beyond parody. And when reality seems like a wild, absurdist skit, how is it possible to further lampoon? When I first heard Infantino's interview yesterday, I honestly thought Connor's sketches or Callan's kicks were doing a special.
Or Mario.
Or Mario, sorry. Yeah, we're doing a World Cup special. I mean, you have a tone-deaf autocrat talking down to people, the arrogance, the cynicism, the false equivalence, the ego, the sheer indifference and badness of his monologue. I think it defies belief in so many ways. As I said to Tommy outside, this was FIFA opening a window and exposing their rotten core. I mean, this is who they are. I think Jason Burt in the Sindo today, I think is a really good piece on it, which starts on the eve of a World Cup built literally and metaphorically on sand. Gianni Infantino had his Trumpian moment. Given the FIFA president spoke for 56 minutes before chiding his inquisitors, it was more than a moment, but it was the day he went full Donald Trump, never mind Sepp Blatter. He has been here before, of course. While Infantino was trying to credit FIFA and the World Cup for driving change in Qatar, it should be remembered he said the tournament had transformed, quote, the perception that the world has about Russia, as he goofily accepted the Order of Fellowship medal from Vladimir Putin in 2018. FIFA are just an irredeemably awful group of people, aren't they?
And wasn't he the guy, Tommy, that was meant to be the reformer? He was the outsider. He was the UEFA man in a kind of an executive role that fell into the position almost by accident after Platini was meant to get it and had to go.
Yeah, I was going to say there, you know, his speech yesterday tarnished the good name of FIFA, but obviously that was lost a long time ago. That was like the greatest trick the devil ever pulled kind of job.
This Kaiser Soze stuff.
Infantino, you know, using that moment of Blatter's fall and the fall of that whole, you know, coterie of FIFA executive committee members coming in and portraying himself as the new broom cleaning up FIFA. And when you see when you see something like this, if you had any doubt, given what we've seen over the years leading up to this tournament, that it is, you know, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
But it's doubled down. He's doubled down on the whole thing of Qatar by defending
the tone of it, you know,
the hour-long speech.
The tone of it, it's what Roy there talks about with the, you know, in reference to the Trump stuff and the you know, the Johnson stuff, and sometimes it can be too easy to say if you see something that's, you know, clearly detached from reality, oh, it's Donald Trump stuff, but it's exactly that creation of alternative reality.
What a battery!
Self-serving alternative reality and complete lack of humility and any sense of, and it just gives you a real picture of these people are just surrounded by yes men and you know, this sense of entitlement, you know, the sheer crassness of somebody that the penny hasn't dropped in. And it actually makes you feel, God, you know, the amount of stuff that's been written about why this World Cup is bad and in terms of like inclusion and human rights and all that stuff, that he would come out with that line yesterday, you know, that today I feel Qatari, today I feel Arabic, today I feel African, today I feel gay, today I feel disabled, today I feel like a migrant worker, and tally it into the fact that he was discriminated because he moved to Switzerland as a child and was bullied because he had red hair and freckles. But you know what I did? I, you know, picked myself up by the bootstraps and look at me now. And it's like he's saying to everybody whose rights have been who've been sullied, everybody who's been maltreated, everybody who's died on those projects, everybody who has been persecuted for their sexuality or their gender, that, like, he's basically saying to them, suck it up, folks, get on with it and be like me, be like Gianni Infantino and sort yourself out. Because, you know, I was like you, I was bullied and I was mistreated, I was discriminated against, you know, and I'm not complaining. Like, it's just the sheer crassness of it is. There's great pieces. I mean, I think Ollie Holt's piece in the Mail, just to come back to the papers, you know, really pulls it together. I think it's obviously a piece that he'd written with regard to his take on the World Cup and FIFA's role in it, and that stuff yesterday just gave him like cracking opening opening for the piece, you know, and you know, an angle to just hammer home what he was trying to say. So, you know, he's just gone, you know. Today I feel angry. Today I feel as if the World Cup that begins today has been hijacked by charlatans, narcissists and bad actors. Today I feel that the planet's biggest sporting event has had its romance stripped away step by step. Today I feel Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, needs to get a new speechwriter. And he goes on and ends by saying, today I feel as if he's killing the World Cup. And maybe that's something we'll get on to when we're talking about, you know, the actual football starts today. Can the football save the World Cup?
And also in that piece, I feel angry that the World Cup is being defiled in this way by these people who betrayed football. I hope that the players provide the same joy and entertainment they always provide, and most of all, I hope that the sick pantomime playing out in Doha will help save football from ever travelling down this road again. But Gianni Infantino, who will have his own view on everything that's been said about him, is going to be elected unopposed, and all the Europeans are going to vote for him. The Germans will abstain, but all of these nations in Europe are going to vote for this guy and to be the new FIFA president for the next few years again. Barney Renee did a brilliant piece in The Observer. Really, though, in between the pull quotes and killer lines, Infantino's performance was something far more disturbing. This was the sound of a man who seems not just tired and angry, but oddly hollowed out, who spent so long residing close to death and to corruption by others that it's begun to rot him from the inside like a dead fish. And also in the piece, Infantino announced that at one point he feels 200% in control of this World Cup, which sounds like the kind of thing someone might say just as their World Cup rears up and gallops off into a creek, not least when that World Cup is already reeling from sponsor slapdown, shifting dates and constant noises off. I think it's a good thing that the World Cup is being held in the Arab world, but why not Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, countries with a football tradition? There's the whole stench of corruption about the way this was awarded to Qatar. There's the fact that it's the size of Dublin. It's a state project. They've got 200 years of natural gas. If there's anything that was a argument for energy independence, this is it. And off the back of the deaths of 6,000 people, it's and the disconnect between that and what the World Cup, you've been to World Cups, Roy, should represent. And I've been to Russia before. Obviously, the Kremlin went on their very, very evil path, even though they'd invaded Crimea. But just to see what the World Cup should be about, which is about the joy of humanity, the joy, and I know you wrote about this in the Examiner during the week as well, about the working man, Tommy, about the joy and the colour of football and life, and what we all have, I suppose, the inner child within us, juxtaposed with this.
The World Cup is so precious to so many people. We can map our early years in life, our coming of age, through World Cup tournaments. I vaguely remember as a 5 or 6 year old kid the 74 final. I remember the ticker tape and being allowed to stay up late in for Argentina in 78. And then 82 was the one as a young teenager. All our gang fell in love with this beautiful Brazilian team, the team of Socrates and Falcao, Zico and Adair. And the devastation when they lost to Italy actually really, really hit home. Paolo Rossi's hat-trick. You felt that something dear to you had gone. Then you advance to when we got involved, and even if you take Euro 88 moving into Italia 90, to be there, it was this age of Irish innocence. It was almost a statement of Ireland saying we've come of age on the international stage, that we're somebody, that sort of traditional insecurity as a nation that we carried, we were asserting ourselves as real people, if you like, real international members of the community. On and on through World Cups, I've been to 4 or 5 of them, and there's something you look forward to for months ahead. You know it's going to be a festival, a coming together. It's the best of humanity, even if FIFA are the worst of same. But this time, again, I was talking to Tommy outside, I would ordinarily have devoured 8 pullouts by this stage on the teams. I've hardly even considered the matches, which is a truly terrible implication of all the background noise that's gone on. All this, I mean, the notion that 6,500 people have lost their lives potentially, and FIFA can sort of blithely say, no, it's 3. That's who these people are. I thought it interesting to find that Infantino actually lives in Qatar now. He's made his home there, and he was addressing an Arab audience yesterday.
Somebody's actually texted in that you guys are missing the point. Infantino's speech wasn't for the Western press, it was for the Arab world, says Colin.
Yeah, I think very much so. I think it was 2 fingers to Europe. His power base is in that part of the world. He is an autocrat who leads without consideration or conscience. He's only concerned with the FIFA brand, and they really do believe themselves. There is also, you know, we talk about the Trump delusion, and he believes a lot of the nonsense that he spouts. I think FIFA are so divorced from reality. They're in such a sheltered ivory tower that most of the stuff they come out with is not just propaganda. It's what they actually truly believe. And that's the most horrifying thing of all.
I think, like Roy said there a few months ago, that like FIFA is irredeemable. Like if you look at the Netflix documentary, FIFA Uncovered, which kind of tells the story of how we got to this point, like it's completely, you know, irredeemable, irreformable. Structurally, there is no way that you could, it doesn't seem to me to be any way that you could possibly reform it, because of the fact that it's like every country has one vote. So essentially it becomes someone like Infantino runs unopposed, because he is able to ensure, much as we had in this country with our own football association, and much as Blatter, the way he ran his show, is that he is the conduit for influence, for money in terms of development money go around the world. Obviously, the problem with what happened in the Blatter days was that money was being siphoned into personal bank accounts of various power brokers in different parts of the world. So the idea...
Is there any devil's advocate argument about FIFA in terms of the fact that they're making billions out of these tournaments and they're developing the game around the world, and a lot of money is going into developing the game in places like Africa and Asia that wouldn't have had a strong footprint in soccer 50 years ago, for example?
I think there is, I think if that's the, if you look at the history of FIFA, that it was a sort of...
And it brought the World Cup to South Africa.
Yeah, it was a sort of...
Brought it to Japan and South Korea, because it was a European and South American tournament for...
Yeah, well, up until 1974, when João Havelange became... he elbowed out Sir Stanley Rouse. It had been basically like a golf club committee, of sort of a few old duffers who sat there and passed the World Cup around. No commercialisation, no sort of... that sense that we now have of it being a vast money-making machine. Havelange came in and realised this thing is bigger than these guys realise. He brought in Blatter, who was able to bring the sponsors in. Horst Dassler was running Adidas at the time. He set up International Sports and Leisure, which basically started marketing the tournament and was basically paying kickbacks directly to Havelange, which was the beginning of the corruption, the sort of structure of corruption that toppled in 2015 with the FBI investigation. So, but at the same time, the reason how Havelange got elected was that he was the first to realise that actually, if I promise all the associations in Asia and Africa and in the developing world and the Caribbean that I'll look after them, I'll have development projects, improve their football, then they'll owe loyalty to me. And it's clientelist politics in a different...
well, it became a commercial organisation. It wasn't a commercial organisation until Havelange and Blatter get control of it. But once that happens, then money will always be subject to...
We have a brilliant case study of it in our own country, where if you don't have accountability, if you don't have governance structures, then, whatever the good you might do will be outweighed by the bad, by the things that the money going places it shouldn't go, the favours being wrought for people, people being badly treated, egos, certain people taking too much power. If you don't have that accountability, and organisations like FIFA and the IOC, they are supranational. They have no accountability. They exist in their own moral realm. So while they're as you say, doubtless there's projects probably all around the world that have come through FIFA money. I mean, what we're seeing today, where...
They're not answerable to anybody. And the most depressing thing for me about it is I can see the World Cup now in 2030 going to Saudi Arabia, Greece and Egypt.
I actually thought at one stage yesterday, given the badlands into which he was taking things, that Infantino may announce Iran as a host of the World Cup, because they're fitting the template at the moment. I mean, some of the stuff he said yesterday, and when we talk about the audience he was speaking to, he did say we have told many lessons from some Europeans, from the Western world. I think for what we Europeans have been doing for the last 3,000 years, we should be apologising for the next 3,000 years before starting to give moral lessons to people. So essentially he's absolving Qatar's whole worldview with that sentence, that the misogyny, the homophobia, the brutal treatment of overseas workers, slaves in effect, that's all okay. The whataboutery, because Europe is not a haven of perfection, that somehow this stuff is justifiable. I mean, the Russian one is really interesting. The fact that that famous picture of himself sitting in the big armchairs with Putin at the last World Cup.
And MBS on the other side.
Exactly. I mean, you were really in the company of sort of the cream of the worst of society, let's say.
But there's a disconnect between that and what I saw on the ground in Russia, which was the celebration of humanity and ordinary Russian people completely baffled and bemused in their joy of seeing other people coming into their country for the first ever time.
Yeah. Just on the, tie that point in a minute, just on the whole, that political aspect of it, it's important, it really is important, because I'm sure people are texting in this point to say that the World Cup has always been a mirror on geopolitics. The brilliant football historian David Goldblatt, was writing about this during the week, that even as far back as 1930, Uruguay, which was a tiny, then rich and a post-colonial nation, newly finding its confidence, used the success of its football team and the hosting of the World Cup to project itself to the world. So where have we heard that before? Mussolini came along in 1934 and projected something very different to the world. The military junta in Argentina in 1978 is probably the closest parallel to what we're seeing. A World Cup where what you're talking about there with the magical, childlike wonder of football is used to, the term wasn't invented at the time, but to sports wash horrendous things happening. Russia 4 years ago, and now here we are today. It's almost like every 4 years you can get nearly a snapshot of where the world is. We have these petrostates and the influence that they are able to carry out around the world. And where it is now, and I think the world is sort of going this way, is a war of values. And we see it now with Russia and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, democracies, autocracies, human rights, dictatorships. People are starting to sort of line up and take sides now. And I think that's part of what this is. Because you can say, as Roy says, that, this is a global thing, different cultures. We have to understand that people have different views. Like, these values, they're literally in the FIFA statutes. They're literally part of what we believe as societies. So at some point, you have to draw the line and stand up for them. Like, you have to actually say, it's all right, very well, having a World Cup, but what about these values that you literally have it? I think it's Article 3 of the FIFA Constitution is the right to inclusion, and so
the football is always only a part of a World Cup. It's the centrepiece, of course, but it's the way the world gathers together, and, for want of a trite term, parties. There's a sense of innocent abroad, of people having this time of their life. I consider Ireland, it's the stuff Roy Keane in some ways railed against in Ireland's 2012 performance in Poland, but it's an integral part. I went to Euro 88 as a 19-year-old, and meeting other people, the joy of seeing other cultures. This World Cup feels like, as Tommy says, it's dividing people rather than bringing people together. There's a sense that nobody, even those travelling, are doing so with sort of hazard lights flashing all around them. You take one wrong act, you do one wrong thing, and it can have serious implications. Not one wrong thing in terms of breaking Western laws, but in doing stuff that may be frowned upon over there, that has been the essence of previous World Cups, having a few beers and singing and dancing in the streets. And I know people will say alcohol shouldn't be a main player, but the reality is it is. I mean, I was out last night and you see the Ireland-Australia game, and it's a social occasion as much as a sporting occasion. You see All-Ireland weekends here. There are people coming together doing the traditional thing they did last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, friends re-meeting. And World Cups are really about that. And if they just become corporate Goliaths making more money, I know you say that money then trickled down, economics brings it back into other areas. But as a showcase for the game, this is just bloody awful.
Okay, we have the football as well. 64 games between now and December the 18th. Interesting from Eamon Sweeney in the Sunday Independent, Tommy, just before we go to the break here. If you object to the hypocrisy, hit the sponsors where it hurts. think about what you'll buy, eat, drink and wear while it's on, and perhaps afterwards as well, because the language of money is the only one big time sport understands. So it's where the sponsors can be hurt is what will actually influence change within FIFA.
Yeah, we know that from scandals past, that like when the sponsors start turning, that's when change happens, and I do wonder whether I think it's a good point to make. Like, what practically can you do? I think we're all going to watch the World Cup because we all still have that childlike wonder that we talk about. It is a magical thing. I think that's why, like, we're after talking here for about 20 minutes, and we're obviously we're all quite sort of
exercised by it,
and it sort of strikes at you in a very deep way. And I think it does come back to the fact that we all fell in love with World Cups when we were children, and we feel this. We feel this as a deep insult to that. We feel that sort of that precious thing being tarnished or being attacked or being used. I think is that what you're talking about there with Russia.
It's being used as a pawn. The beautiful game is the global religion, and it's a bigger religion than any actual religion. But it's the fact that it's almost been seized and used.
Like that is at the core of all the coverage you see and all the pieces and all the deeply felt. And sometimes it feels like too much. That's at the core of what everybody feels about it. That's that sense of this is not right. This is, and people will text and I'm sure saying you guys are deluded. This is just the way of the world. This is the way it's going on. Get off your high horse. But I think it's something where you feel like a gut thing. I think that it just feels like that. It feels like this World Cup is like, when you've got a stomach bug and you can feel the cramps coming and you can feel the discomfort, and it's now we're at the projectile vomit stage of of the coverage.
Well, enjoy Qatar, Ecuador at 4 o'clock. 53106 lads, I love soccer and decided not to watch this World Cup. People have a choice and they don't have to watch it, or News Talk don't need to discuss it, says Ted in Dungarvan. Well, I went through all the papers, as did Roy and Tommy this morning, Ted, and there's very little coverage of the actual football. There's very little, like the amount of compelling narratives you have. Messi, Mbappe, Neymar, Benzema's been ruled out over the last 24 hours. England, Wales in the first World Cup since 1958. All of these things that will seep now into our discussion over the next week. But I suppose you can't ignore the political, the journalistic aspect of discussing where it's being held, because it is completely absurd, as FIFA might disagree with that.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.